The heart monitor's steady beep shattered when the hospital room door slammed open. Grace Patterson lay helpless in that bed, 7 months pregnant, her baby's life hanging in the balance. She never expected the woman who burst through that door. Marcus's mistress, armed with hospital security codes only her husband knew. But what happened next would change everything. Because when Grace's billionaire father-in-law learned what his son had done, he didn't just offer sympathy, he offered war. And Marcus Blackwell was about to learn that some women don't break when you try to destroy them. They rise, they fight back, and they win. This is the true story of a woman who lost everything and discovered she'd actually lost nothing that mattered. A story of betrayal, survival, and the unexpected allies who help us find our strength. Stay until the end, because Grace's transformation will surprise you. And if her story resonates with you, hit that like button, drop a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe so you never miss stories of women who refuse to stay silent. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because Grace's fight might just inspire theirs. Now let me take you back to that hospital room where everything began to fall apart and where Grace finally started to come together. The heart monitor's steady beep shattered when the hospital room door slammed open. Grace Patterson jerked awake in the narrow bed, her hands instinctively moving to protect the swell of her belly. 7 months pregnant, high blood pressure, mandatory bed rest. The afternoon light filtered through the blinds, casting stripes across the white sheets that tangled around her legs. She blinked, disoriented. The clock on the wall read 3:15. Marcus had left hours ago. Emergency investor meeting, he'd said. His phone had been buzzing all morning. She'd watched him take the call in the hallway, his shoulders tense, his voice dropping to that smooth professional tone he used when he wanted to sound in control. The door stood open now. A woman filled the frame. Grace recognized her immediately. Sienna Vale, Marcus's brand consultant, the social media influencer with 2 million followers and a smile that looked expensive. She'd met her twice. Once at a company party where Sienna had air-kissed her cheeks and complimented her dress. Once at a charity gala where Sienna had barely acknowledged her existence. Today, Sienna wasn't smiling. "You need to sign the divorce papers, Grace." Sienna's voice cut through the room like glass. She stepped inside, designer handbag swinging from her shoulder. Red-soled shoes clicked against the linoleum floor. "Stop being pathetic." Grace pushed herself up against the pillows. Her heart rate jumped. The monitor beside her bed started beeping faster. "What are you talking about? Where's Marcus?" "Marcus sent me." Sienna moved closer. Her perfume arrived before she did. Something floral and overwhelming. "He's done with this charade. You're trapping him with that baby, and everyone knows it." The words landed like physical blows. Grace felt her chest tighten. "Get out! You can't be in here." "I can be wherever I want." Sienna reached the bed. Her perfectly manicured hand gripped the IV stand beside Grace's arm. "Marcus gave me the room number. He told me to make you understand." That detail pierced through Grace's confusion. Marcus gave her the room number. Marcus told her to come. That's not possible. Grace heard her own voice shake. She hated that shake. 4 years of marriage had taught her to make herself smaller, quieter, less demanding. But this was different. This was her hospital room, her baby, her body hooked up to monitors that tracked every spike of stress. "You need to leave right now." Sienna yanked the IV stand. The wheels scraped. The tube connected to Grace's arm pulled tight. Grace grabbed for it, trying to protect the needle in her vein. "Stop! What are you doing?" "Making you listen." Sienna's voice rose. Her face twisted into something ugly. All that Instagram-perfect beauty collapsed into raw anger. "He loves me. We've been together for months. That baby is the only thing keeping him trapped in this ridiculous marriage." The IV stand tilted. Grace felt the needle shift in her arm. Pain shot up to her elbow. She tried to shield her belly with her other hand, but Sienna was grabbing at the sheets now, pulling them away. "You're nothing," Sienna shouted. "Some poor teacher he married to look good for his family. You think you belong in his world? You're embarrassing." The door burst open again. 2 nurses rushed in, their scrubs a blur of motion. One grabbed Sienna's arm. The other moved to Grace's side, checking the IV line. "Security!" The first nurse yelled into the hallway. Room 412. We need security now. Sienna fought against the nurse's grip. Her handbag fell to the floor. Lipstick and car keys scattered across the linoleum. Let go of me. Do you know who I am? I have 2 million followers. I don't care if you have 10 million. The nurse's voice was steel. She was older, maybe 50, with gray streaks in her dark hair and the kind of grip that came from years of handling difficult situations. You're assaulting a patient. Grace couldn't breathe. The room spun. Her baby. Was her baby okay? She pressed both hands to her stomach, feeling for movement. Please, please be okay. The second nurse leaned over her. Her name tag read Maria. Grace, honey, look at me. Can you feel the baby moving? Grace nodded. Tears streamed down her face. She couldn't stop them. I think so. I don't know. Is she okay? We're going to check right now. Maria's hands moved efficiently, adjusting the monitor, pulling Grace's hospital gown up to expose her belly. Just breathe for me, in and out, nice and slow. 2 security guards arrived. They took control of Sienna, who was still screaming. Her voice echoed down the hallway as they pulled her away. Marcus loves me. This is his baby too. You can't keep him from making his own choices. The door closed. Sudden silence. Just the beeping of the heart monitor. Faster now, racing. Grace's pulse thundered in her ears. Maria pressed the fetal monitor to Grace's stomach. The sound of the baby's heartbeat filled the room. Quick. Too quick. Irregular. Is that normal? Grace grabbed Maria's wrist. That doesn't sound normal. Dr. Shaw is on her way. Maria's voice stayed calm, but her eyes were worried. Just keep breathing. You're doing great. Grace tried to breathe, in and out, but her mind kept replaying Sienna's words. Marcus gave me the room number. He told me to make you understand. He'd known. Her husband had known Sienna was coming, had given her access, had sent her to do what? Scare Grace into signing papers? Stress her into early labor? End the pregnancy? The first nurse returned, her face grim. Dr. Shaw will be here in 2 minutes. Security is calling the police. That woman is going to be charged. Grace barely heard her. She stared at the ceiling tiles, counted them. 1, 2, 3, anything to stop thinking about Marcus's face this morning. The way he'd kissed her forehead before leaving. A dry, perfunctory kiss. The kind you give out of habit, not love. How long had this been happening? How long had she been living in a marriage that was already over? Dr. Rebecca Shaw swept into the room like a force of nature. Late 40s, competent, with a runner's build and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd been Grace's OB/GYN for 6 months. The only person in this hospital Grace actually trusted. Talk to me. Shaw pulled on gloves, already examining the monitor readings. What happened? The first nurse explained. Physical altercation. IV stand displaced. Patient extremely distressed. Fetal heart rate elevated and irregular. Dr. Shaw listened, her expression growing darker with each detail. When the nurse finished, she turned to Grace. I'm going to examine you and the baby. Then we're going to talk about what happens next. Grace nodded. She couldn't find words anymore. Her throat felt swollen shut. The examination took 15 minutes. Dr. Shaw's hands were gentle but thorough, checking for injuries, monitoring contractions, assessing the baby's position and heart rate. Maria adjusted the monitors, recording everything. Finally, Dr. Shaw pulled off her gloves. The baby's heartbeat is elevated but stable. You're not in labor. No signs of placental abruption. But Grace, your blood pressure is dangerous. 170/100. That's stroke territory. I'm sorry. The words came automatically. Grace had spent 4 years apologizing, for existing, for having needs, for not being enough. I didn't mean for this to happen. Stop! Dr. Shaw's voice was firm. She pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. You did nothing wrong. A woman assaulted you while you were lying helpless in a hospital bed. You have nothing to apologize for. Grace touched her belly. The baby moved under her palm. A small flutter. Relief flooded through her. She's okay? For now. Dr. Shaw didn't sugarcoat it. But we need to keep you under close observation. Any more stress like this, and we're looking at emergency delivery. At 34 weeks, your baby would survive, but she'd need NICU care, possible breathing problems, feeding difficulties. The longer we can keep her inside, the better. 34 weeks. Grace had been counting down to 40. She had 6 weeks left, 6 more weeks to prepare, to fix whatever was broken in her marriage, to become the kind of a mother who could protect her child. She'd failed before the baby was even born. There's something else. Maria glanced at Dr. Shaw, who nodded. Honey, we need to tell you, that woman, Sienna, she had your room number. She had the security code to get past the locked ward entrance. Someone gave her access. Grace already knew, but hearing it confirmed made it real. My husband. We don't know that for certain, DeShaw said, though her tone suggested otherwise. But security is investigating. They're pulling video footage from the hallway and entrance. The door opened again. This time, it was a different nurse. Younger. Her eyes were wide. DeShaw, someone's here. He's asking for Grace Patterson. Who? Dr. Shaw stood up. Theodore Blackwell. The young nurse's voice dropped to a whisper. The Theodore Blackwell. He says he's her father-in-law. Security is with him, but he's demanding to see her immediately. Grace's stomach dropped. Theodore. Marcus's father. The billionaire real estate mogul who'd built half the city's skyline. She'd met him maybe 10 times in 4 years. Their wedding. A few family dinners. He was always polite, always distant, a man who measured everything in terms of value and return on investment. She'd never been sure if she provided enough of either. Should I let him in? The young nurse looked between Dr. Shaw and Grace. Grace wanted to say no. She wanted to pull the thin hospital blanket over her head and disappear. But this was Theodore Blackwell. People didn't say no to him. Give me 2 minutes with my patient first. Dr. Shaw turned back to Grace. You don't have to buy him if you don't want to. I can have security keep him out. It's fine. Grace wiped her face. Her hands came away wet with tears she hadn't realized were still falling. He should know what his son did. Dr. Shaw studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. 2 minutes, then I'm sending him in. But Grace, you're in charge here. If you want him to leave at any point, you tell me. This is your room. Your body, your choice. Grace almost laughed. Her choice. She'd spent 4 years living in Theodore's world, following Theodore's unspoken rules, trying to be worthy of Theodore's son. Nothing had been her choice for a long time. The door closed. Silence again. Grace looked down at her hands. Her wedding ring caught the light. Platinum band, diamonds so big it felt heavy. Marcus had insisted on the most expensive option. You're a Blackwell now, he'd said. You need to look the part. She'd never felt like she looked the part. Teacher's salary, thrift store clothes, student loan debt. She'd tried to adapt, bought the right dresses, learned which fork to use at charity dinners, smiled at his business associates and laughed at jokes she didn't find funny. None of it had mattered. The door opened. Theodore Blackwell walked in. He was 67 but looked younger. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that came from decades of people listening when he spoke. His suit probably cost more than Grace's first car. But his face, when he saw her lying in that hospital bed, wires and tubes everywhere, her eyes swollen from crying, did something Grace had never seen before. It crumpled. Grace, his voice cracked. What happened to you? And somehow that broke her completely. The tears came harder now, painful sobs that hurt her chest and made the monitors beep frantically. Because in 4 years of marriage, Marcus had never looked at her the way his father was looking at her now. Like she mattered. Like someone had hurt something precious. Like he was about to make someone pay for it. Theodore Blackwell moved like a man who'd spent his life commanding rooms. But when he reached Grace's bedside, his hands hesitated. They hovered in the air between them, uncertain, as if he didn't know how to touch someone without breaking them further. Tell me. His voice was quieter now, controlled, the kind of quiet that preceded storms. Tell me everything. Grace tried to speak, her throat closed around the words. She shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Dr. Shaw stepped forward. She'd been standing by the window, giving them space, but now she moved with purpose. Blackwell, your daughter-in-law was physically attacked approximately 30 minutes ago. A woman named Sienna Vale entered this room and assaulted her. Grace is 7 months pregnant and on mandatory bed rest for dangerously high blood pressure. The attack caused significant stress. The baby's heart rate became irregular. We're monitoring closely for signs of premature labor. Theodore's jaw tightened. Sienna Vale. You know her? Dr. Shaw's eyebrows rose. She's my son's brand consultant. Each word came out clipped. She's been working with his company for 6 months. She claimed to be more than that. Maria spoke up from where she was adjusting Grace's IV. The older nurse had no apparent fear of billionaires. She said your son sent her, that he gave her the room number and security codes to get past our locked ward entrance. Theodore's face went very still. Grace recognized that expression. She'd seen Marcus use it when closing a difficult business deal, the moment when all emotion drained away and calculation took over. Show me the security footage. He pulled out his phone. I can't do that, Dr. Shaw said. Patient privacy laws. Then show it to the police when they arrive. Theodore's fingers moved across his phone screen. I want criminal charges filed. Assault on a pregnant woman. I want her destroyed. The viciousness in that last word made Grace flinch. This was the Theodore she'd always suspected existed beneath the polished exterior. The man who'd built an empire by crushing competition. Mr. Blackwell, Dr. Shaw said carefully, perhaps we should focus on Grace's immediate medical needs. I am focusing on her needs. Theodore looked up from his phone. My daughter-in-law was attacked. My grandchild's life was endangered. Someone gave that woman access to a secure hospital ward. I want to know who, and I want them held accountable. Grace found her voice. It came out hoarse, damaged. It was Marcus. Theodore turned to her. What? Marcus gave her the room number. Grace's hands twisted in the sheets. She said so. She said he sent her to make me understand, to sign divorce papers. The words hung in the air. Dr. Shaw and Maria exchanged glances. Theodore's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Have you seen these divorce papers? He asked. Grace shook her head. Has my son mentioned divorce to you? No, but he's been distant for months. Always working late, always on his phone. I thought it was just stress from the company. She felt stupid saying it out loud. The classic cliché. The wife who didn't see what everyone else probably knew. I didn't realize he was planning to leave. Theodore was quiet for a long moment. Then he lifted his phone to his ear. Vivian, I need you at City General Hospital. Room 412. Immediately. Bring the file on Marcus's company finances. Everything. A pause. I don't care if you're in a meeting. This is more important. He ended the call, looked at Grace. Vivian Cross is my personal attorney. She's going to help you. I don't need an attorney. Grace pulled the blanket higher. I need to know if my baby is okay. I need to understand what's happening to my marriage. I don't need lawyers. Grace. Theodore moved closer. He pulled the chair Dr. Shaw had used and sat down, bringing himself to her eye level. Listen to me carefully. If my son sent that woman here, if he gave her access to this hospital room while you were vulnerable and pregnant, then this isn't about a failing marriage. This is about something much worse. What do you mean? I mean my son is capable of things I've tried not to see. Theodore's voice was steady, but Grace caught the pain underneath. I hoped marriage would mature him, hoped a child would give him purpose. I was wrong. Dr. Shaw cleared her throat. Perhaps this conversation should wait until Grace is more stable. No. Grace sat up straighter, ignoring the protest from her aching back. I want to know. What things? Theodore studied her face. How much do you know about Marcus's business? He runs a tech startup, software development. You invested in it 2 years ago. Grace recited the facts she'd been told. It's been doing well. He just closed a major funding round. Is that what he told you? Something cold slid down Grace's spine. Isn't it true, Air? Vivian will explain the details when she arrives. Theodore stood up. But Grace, I need you to understand something. Whatever happens next, you're not alone. You have my protection. Both you and my grandchild. Why? The question burst out before Grace could stop it. You barely know me. We've had maybe 10 real conversations in 4 years. Why would you protect me now? Theodore looked at her for a long moment. Because I've watched you for 4 years. Watched you try so hard to fit into a world that didn't want you. Watched you shrink yourself to make my son comfortable. Watched you apologize for existing. His voice roughened. My wife did the same thing. For 40 years, Helen made herself smaller to survive in this family. I let it happen because it was convenient, because a quiet wife was easier than an honest partnership. Grace had never heard Theodore speak like this, had never imagined him capable of this kind of self-awareness. When Marcus told us you were pregnant, Theodore continued, Helen cried. She said maybe this was a chance for our family to do better, to build something healthier. I didn't listen. I should have. The door opened. A woman strode in, mid-40s, expensively dressed, carrying a leather briefcase. Vivian Cross. Grace recognized her from a charity gala. Theodore's attorney. The woman who'd built her reputation destroying people in court. Theodore. Vivian's sharp eyes swept the room, taking in Grace's hospital bed, the monitors, the obvious signs of distress. What happened? Sienna Vale happened. Theodore's voice went cold again. She attacked Grace. I want charges filed, and I want you to look into something else. I think my son is planning to divorce Grace and take her for everything she has. Vivian set her briefcase on the small table by the window. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. Grace told the story again. It didn't get easier with repetition. Sienna bursting in, the IV stand, the words that cut deeper than any physical injury. Marcus gave me the room number. Vivian listened without interrupting. She took notes on a legal pad, her handwriting quick and precise. When Grace finished, Vivian looked at Theodore. You want me to represent Grace? Yes. Against your son? Against whoever needs to be held accountable. Theodore's tone left no room for argument, including Marcus, if necessary. Vivian nodded slowly. Grace, I need to ask you some questions. Some of them might be difficult. Okay. Grace felt numb now. The tears had stopped. She'd cried herself dry. When was the last time you saw your bank statements? The question seemed random. I don't know. A few months ago? Do you have access to your joint accounts? I have a credit card. Marcus handles the finances. He said it was easier that way, less complicated. Vivian and Theodore exchanged a look. Do you have any accounts in just your name? I have my old checking account from before we got married. I keep my teacher's pension contributions there. It's not much, maybe $3,000. Student loans? Vivian asked. Paid off when we got married. Marcus insisted, said it was embarrassing for a Blackwell to have debt. Did you sign any loan documents recently? Business loans? Lines of credit? Grace shook her head. No, why would I? Vivian didn't answer directly. Instead, she opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. Theodore asked me to look into Marcus's company last month. He had concerns about some financial irregularities. Why didn't you tell me? Grace looked at Theodore. I wanted to be sure before I said anything. Theodore's expression was grim. I didn't want to damage your marriage if I was wrong. What did you find? Grace asked Vivian. A pattern of questionable transfers, money moving out of the company, accounts into offshore holdings. I couldn't prove anything illegal at first. But now, with this attack, I'm wondering if there's more to the story. Vivian turned to Theodore. I need your permission to conduct a full forensic audit. It's going to be expensive, and if Marcus finds out, he'll know you're investigating him. Do it. Theodore didn't hesitate. Whatever it costs. A knock at the door. Everyone turned. A security guard stood in the hallway looking uncomfortable. Mrs. Blackwell, the police are here. They need to take your statement about the assault. The next hour blurred together. 2 police officers, 1 male and 1 female, both professional and sympathetic. They took Grace's statement, photographed the red mark on her arm where the IV had pulled, collected the security footage from the hospital. Sienna had already been arrested outside the building. Assault charges filed. Restraining order pending. Through it all, Theodore sat in the corner, making phone calls. Grace caught fragments. His company's head of security, the hospital administrator, someone named Owen, who Theodore kept calling his best problem solver. Maria brought Grace dinner. Bland chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, hospital food. Grace couldn't eat. Her stomach churned every time she thought about Marcus, about Sienna's words, about the possibility that her entire marriage had been a lie. Dr. Shaw returned around 7. How are you feeling? Tired. It was the only honest answer Grace could give. Your blood pressure is still too high, 165/98. Better than before, but not good enough. Dr. Shaw checked the fetal monitor. Baby's heartbeat is stable. That's the best news I can give you right now. Can I go home? Absolutely not. You're staying here under observation for at least 48 hours. If your blood pressure doesn't come down, we're looking at hospitalization until delivery. The thought of staying in this room, in this bed where Sienna had attacked her, made Grace's chest tighten. I don't want to be here. I know. Dr. Shaw's voice was gentle. But right now, this is the safest place for you and your baby. We can move you to a different room if that helps. Somewhere more private with restricted access. Theodore stood up. Do it. And I want private security on her door. 24 hours. No one gets in without my approval. Mr. Blackwell, this is a hospital, not a fortress, Dr. Shaw said. It is now. Theodore's tone brooked no argument. My grandchild was nearly harmed today because security failed. That won't happen again. Grace watched this unfold with a strange detachment. 2 days ago, her biggest worry was whether she'd finish the nursery in time. Now she had bodyguards and lawyers and her father-in-law declaring war on his own son. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. She'd been ignoring it for hours. Now she picked it up. 17 missed calls from Marcus. 23 text messages. She opened the texts. Her hands shook. Marcus, where are you? Why aren't you answering? Marcus, the hospital called me. What's going on? Marcus, Grace, answer your phone right now. Marcus, this is ridiculous. I'm coming there. Marcus, security won't let me in. What did you tell them? Marcus, my father called me. He's making serious accusations. You need to tell him the truth about Sienna. Marcus, you're making a huge mistake. Whatever my father is saying, it's not true. Marcus, call me. We need to talk about this privately, without lawyers. Marcus, Grace, I'm your husband. You owe me a conversation. Marcus, fine. If this is how you want to play it, don't say I didn't warn you. The last message had been sent 10 minutes ago. Grace stared at the words. Don't say I didn't warn you. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I love you. Not, is the baby okay? A threat. She showed the messages to Vivian, who photographed them with her phone. Evidence, Vivian said. Keep every communication. Don't delete anything. What if he's right? Grace heard herself ask. What if I'm making this worse? Maybe Sienna was acting alone. Maybe Marcus didn't know. Grace. Theodore's voice cut through her spiral. Stop. I've watched you apologize and second-guess yourself for 4 years. It ends now. You don't understand. Grace clutched the phone. He's my husband. We're having a baby together. I can't just throw that away because I'm upset. You're not throwing anything away. He already did. Theodore moved back to her bedside. Grace, look at me. Do you honestly believe my son had no idea Sienna was coming here? Do you believe she got your room number and security codes by accident? Grace wanted to say yes, wanted to believe Marcus was innocent, but the words stuck in her throat. Tomorrow, Theodore continued, Vivian is going to show you something. Financial records, evidence. Before you make any decisions about your marriage, you need to see what my son has been doing, what he's been planning. What if I don't want to know? Then you'll spend the rest of your life wondering. Theodore's expression softened. I know this is terrifying. I know you want to believe in the man you married. But Grace, that man is not who Marcus is. Maybe he never was. A noise in the hallway, raised voices. Everyone in the room tensed. The door burst open. A man in a security uniform looked in, apologetic. I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwell. He's demanding to see his wife. He says he has legal rights. Marcus appeared behind the security guard. He looked disheveled, his tie loose, his hair messed up. His eyes found Grace immediately. Grace, thank God. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? Grace couldn't speak. Looking at him now, she saw a stranger. The man who'd promised to love and protect her. The man who'd sent his mistress to intimidate her in a hospital bed. Get out! Theodore's voice was ice. Dad, stay out of this. Marcus tried to push past the security guard. This is between me and my wife. She's not your wife anymore. Theodore moved to block the door. She's my daughter-in-law, and you sent someone to harm her. You're done. That's insane. Marcus's voice rose. I didn't send Sienna anywhere. She's unstable. I had no idea she'd do something like this. Stop lying. The words came from Grace. Everyone turned to look at her. She'd sat up fully now, the blanket fallen away, her hospital gown twisted around her swollen belly. She had my room number, Marcus, the security codes. She said you told her to make me understand, to sign divorce papers. She's making it up. Marcus looked desperate now. Grace, she's obsessed with me. I tried to fire her, and she threatened to ruin my reputation. This is her way of getting revenge. Then why, Vivian said calmly from the window, did you text Grace 23 times in the last 4 hours without once asking if she or the baby were injured? Marcus's mouth opened, closed. I was worried. I didn't know what to say. You managed to write, "Don't say I didn't warn you." Vivian held up her phone, showing the screenshot. That sounds less like worry and more like intimidation. I was upset. I'm not thinking clearly. Marcus looked around the room, seeking allies. He found none. Dad, you can't seriously believe I would hurt Grace. She's carrying your grandchild, your heir. Oh, Marcus. Theodore's voice was almost sad. That's the only reason you married her, isn't it? The trust fund requirements. The family expectation that you'd settle down and produce an heir. Grace was never a person to you. She was a solution to a problem. Grace felt something crack inside of her chest. Because she'd known this. On some level, she'd always known. Marcus had proposed 6 months after they started dating. So fast. She thought it was passion, thought he couldn't wait to start their life together. It had been convenience. Get out, Theodore said again. If you ever come near Grace or my grandchild again without permission, I'll destroy everything you've built. Do you understand me? You can't do that. It's my company. Built with my money, on property I own, with investors I introduced you to. Theodore's smile was terrible. Walk away now or find out exactly how much power I have. Marcus stared at his father, then at Grace. His expression shifted. The desperation vanished. What replaced it was cold calculation. Fine, we'll do this the legal one. But Grace, when this is over, don't expect me to be generous. You're nothing without me. You'll sign whatever I put in front of you, or you'll watch me take everything, including our daughter. The threat landed like a physical blow. Grace gasped. Her hands went to her belly protectively. Security, Theodore said quietly. Remove my son from the building. If he returns, call the police. 2 guards appeared. They took Marcus by the arms. He didn't fight, just kept his eyes on Grace as they pulled him backward into the hallway. This isn't over, Grace. Remember that. Nothing is over. The door closed. Silence fell. Grace realized she was shaking. Her whole body trembled like she'd been dropped in ice water. Dr. Shaw rushed to her side. Grace, breathe. You need to breathe. Grace tried. Her lungs wouldn't cooperate. The room spun. Dark spots danced at the edges of her vision. She's hyperventilating. Dr. Shaw grabbed an oxygen mask from the wall. Grace, listen to my voice. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Follow my breathing. Grace focused on Dr. Shaw's face. In, out, in, out. Slowly the room steadied. The dark spots faded, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. That's it. You're doing great, Shutter. Shaw kept the oxygen mask in place. Just keep breathing. Nothing else matters right now except breathing. But Grace knew that wasn't true. Everything mattered. Her marriage was over. Her husband wanted to take her baby. She had no job, no income, no way to fight back against a man with unlimited resources. She was trapped. And the baby inside her, still moving against her hands, was the only thing keeping Grace from falling apart completely. Grace didn't sleep that night. The hospital transferred her to a private room on the 4th floor, away from the maternity ward, with restricted access and a security guard named Owen Hart stationed outside her door. He was 50-ish, built like someone who'd spent years in military service, with steady eyes and a calm demeanor that should have been reassuring. It wasn't. Nothing was reassuring anymore. Every sound in the hallway made her jump. Every footstep, every voice. She kept expecting Marcus to appear, to push past security, to finish what Sienna had started. Her imagination ran wild in the dark hours. What if he bribed the guards? What if he found another way in? What if he decided the baby was more valuable than Grace herself? At 3 in the morning, she gave up trying to rest. She sat up carefully, mindful of the wires and tubes still connected to her body. The fetal monitor beeped steadily, her daughter's heartbeat, the most reassuring sound in the world. Grace touched her belly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I brought you into this mess." The baby kicked, a small flutter against her palm. Grace closed her eyes, tears leaking out despite her best efforts to hold them back. She'd spent months imagining her daughter's life. A loving family, 2 parents who adored her, birthday parties and school plays and bedtime stories. Normal things, simple things. None of that would happen now. Her phone buzzed. She picked it up, expecting more messages from Marcus. Instead, she saw her mother's name. "Mom, baby, I'm outside your room. The guard won't let me in. Can you tell him it's okay?" Grace's throat tightened. She pressed the call button for the nurse. Maria appeared a minute later, still on shift somehow, looking exhausted but alert. "Can you tell Owen to let my mother in?" Grace asked. "Her name is Judith Patterson." "Of course, honey." Maria squeezed Grace's shoulder. "I'll bring her right in." Judith Patterson entered the room like a small hurricane. She was 58, barely 5 feet tall, with Grace's same brown hair wrought through with a gray and hands that never stopped moving. 30 years as a nurse in the county hospital had given her an efficient, no-nonsense energy that cut through any situation. She took one look at Grace and burst into tears. "Mom, don't." Grace's own tears started again. "Please don't cry. I can't handle it if you cry." Oh, what did he do? Judith moved to the bedside, her hands already checking the monitors, the IV line, the way only a mother who was also a nurse could. "What did that boy do to my baby girl?" Grace told her. Everything. Sienna's attack, Marcus's texts, Theodore's accusations, the divorce threats. As she spoke, Judith's expression shifted from grief to fury. "I never liked him," Judith said when Grace finished. "I know I smiled at the wedding. I know I said congratulations. But I never liked him. Too smooth, too perfect. Rich boys like that, they don't marry girls like us unless they want something." "I thought he loved me." Grace's voice cracked. "Oh, honey." Judith climbed onto the narrow hospital bed, careful of the wires, and pulled Grace against her shoulder. "I know you did. And maybe part of him did love you. But people like the Blackwells, they love things that serve their purpose. The minute you stop being useful, they move on." Grace breathed in her mother's familiar scent, lavender soap and hospital antiseptic, the smell of her childhood. "What am I going to do? I have no money, no job. I quit teaching when Marcus said it was embarrassing for his wife to work. How am I supposed to raise a baby alone?" "You're not alone." Judith stroked Grace's hair. "You have me. You have your old apartment if you want it. I kept paying the rent just in case. I know you thought I was being paranoid, but you kept my apartment?" Grace pulled back to look at her mother. "The lease was up 2 years ago. I renewed it every year with my own money." Judith's expression was defensive. "Call it a mother's intuition. Something about Marcus always felt wrong. I wanted you to have an escape route if you needed it." Grace started crying harder. "I don't deserve you. You deserve better than him." Judith wiped Grace's tears with the corner of the hospital blanket. "Now tell me about the father, Theodore. What's his angle?" "I don't know." Grace leaned back against the pillows, exhausted. "He says he wants to protect me and the baby. He's hired a lawyer, ordered private security, but I don't understand why. We barely know each other." "Guilt, probably." Judith stood up and started tidying the room with the automatic efficiency of someone who couldn't sit still. She straightened the water pitcher, adjusted the blinds, folded the extra blanket. "He knows what his son is. Maybe he's been knowing for years. Now it's come to this and he's trying to fix it. Can he fix it? People with that kind of money can fix almost anything." Judith paused by the window. "Question is, what does he expect in return?" Grace hadn't thought about that. Theodore's protection had seemed unconditional. But nothing was free, especially not in the Blackwell family. A soft knock at the door. Owen stuck his head in. "Mrs. Blackwell, Miss Cross is here. She says Mr. Ripa Blackwell sent her with some documents for you to review." Grace glanced at the clock. 6:15 in the morning. "Tell her to come in." Vivian Cross entered carrying her leather briefcase and 2 coffee cups from the expensive place downtown. She handed one to Judith without asking. "You look like you need this more than I do." Judith accepted the coffee with raised eyebrows. "Thank you. You're Grace's mother?" Vivian settled into the chair by the bed. "Judith Patterson, and you're the fancy lawyer Theodore hired to save my daughter." "That's an oversimplification, but essentially accurate." Vivian opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Grace, I'm going to show you some things. They're not pleasant. If you want your mother to leave first, I understand." "She stays." Grace reached for Judith's hand. "Whatever you're going to tell me, I need her here." Vivian nodded. She spread papers across the hospital tray table. Bank statements, loan documents, credit reports, pages and pages of numbers and signatures. "These are copies of documents from Marcus's company accounts," Vivian explained. "Theodore gave me access to everything last night. What I found is systematic fraud spanning at least 18 months. Grace stared at the papers. The numbers blurred together. "I don't understand." "Let me break it down." Vivian pulled out a highlighted statement. "This is a business loan Marcus took out 14 months ago, $250,000. See the signature at the bottom?" Grace looked. Her stomach dropped. The signature read, "Grace Patterson Blackwell," in her own handwriting. "I didn't sign that." Her voice came out weak. "I never saw that document." "I know." Vivian pulled out another paper. "Here's another one. 6 months ago. $100,000 line of credit. Again, your signature." Grace's hand started shaking. She put down the coffee before she spilled it. "How is that possible? How can my name be on loans I didn't sign?" "Forgery." Vivian's voice was matter of fact. "Marcus has been using your signature to take out loans against the company. The money goes into business accounts, then gets transferred to offshore holdings. On paper, you're personally liable for over $800,000 in debt." The room spun. $800,000. Grace made $30,000 a year as a teacher before she quit. She'd never seen that much money in her life. "He set me up." The realization hit like ice water. He was planning this, setting me up to take the fall for whatever he's doing. "That's what it looks like." Vivian pulled out more papers. "There's also this, divorce papers, drafted 3 months ago, before Sienna's attack, before you even knew there was a problem." Judith leaned over to read the papers. Her face went red. "He wants full custody? He's claiming Grace is mentally unstable? Emotionally volatile due to pregnancy hormones." Vivian pointed to a specific paragraph. "There's a psychological evaluation scheduled for her next week. Mandatory. If she refuses, the court can use that as evidence against her." Grace couldn't process this. 3 months ago, she'd been decorating the nursery, folding tiny clothes. Marcus had helped her assemble the crib. He'd laughed when they couldn't figure out the instructions. He'd kissed her and said he couldn't wait to be a father. All of it had been a lie. "There's more." Vivian handed her another document. "This is a prenuptial agreement. Do you remember signing one?" "We didn't have a prenup." Grace took the paper. "Marcus said they were unromantic, that he trusted me. This one is dated 2 weeks before your wedding. It states that in the event of divorce, you waive all rights to marital assets and agree to supervise visitation only if children are involved." Grace stared at her own signature at the bottom. It looked perfect, exactly like her handwriting, but she'd never seen this document before in her life. He forged everything. The truth settled over her like a heavy blanket. Every signature, every document. He's been planning this since before we got married. Most likely. Vivian gathered the papers. "Which means this isn't about Sienna. She's just the most recent piece. Marcus has been building a case to divorce you, take full custody of your child, and leave you personally liable for nearly $1 million in fraudulent debt." Judith made a sound somewhere between a sob and a growl. "That calculating son of a—" "The question now," Vivian interrupted, "is what you want to do about it." Grace looked at her mother, then at Vivian, then at the papers spread across the table. Evidence of months of planning, of a husband who'd never loved her, who'd married her as part of some elaborate scheme that she still didn't fully understand. I want to fight back. Her voice was steady now. The tears had stopped. In their place was something harder, colder. Tell me what I need to do. Vivian smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. First, we need to prove the signatures are forged. I've already contacted a handwriting expert. She'll be here this afternoon to take samples. Second, we file charges, fraud, forgery, identity theft. Make this a criminal matter, not just civil. Will it work? Grace asked. Against someone with Marcus's resources? Vivian shrugged. It'll be difficult, but we have one advantage. His father is on our side. Theodore has more money, more influence, and more motivation to see this through. He's been building his empire for 40 years. Marcus has been playing at business for less than a decade. In a war of resources, Theodore wins. I don't want to be part of a war. Grace touched her belly. I just want my baby to be safe. Then you fight. Judith squeezed her hand. Because men like Marcus, they don't stop unless someone makes them stop. Your baby needs a mother who's willing to stand up and say no more. Grace thought about that, about the last 4 years of making herself smaller, of apologizing for existing, of trying so hard to be enough for a man who'd never intended to keep her anyway. She thought about her daughter, about what kind of example she was setting, about whether she wanted to raise a girl who learned that women should shrink themselves to survive. Okay, Grace looked at Vivian. I'll do whatever it takes. Good. Vivian stood up. I'll start the paperwork. In the meantime, don't talk to Marcus. Don't respond to his texts. Don't engage at all. Everything goes through me now. After Vivian left, Grace sat in silence with her mother. The morning light filtered through the blinds. Outside, the city was waking up. Cars honking, birds singing, normal people living normal lives. Grace's life would never be normal again. Mom, she said quietly. Yeah, baby? Do you remember when I first met Marcus at that charity fundraiser for the school district? Judith's expression tightened. I remember. He bought a table for $10,000. He came over to introduce himself. He said he admired teachers, said his mother had been a teacher before she married his father. Grace's voice was distant, remembering. I thought he was the most charming man I'd ever met. He is charming. Judith began folding the blanket again, her hands needing work. That's how people like him operate. They find vulnerable people and make them feel special. Was I vulnerable, May? You just broken up with Daniel. You were lonely, working 3 jobs trying to pay off student loans, living in that tiny apartment with the broken heater. Judith's voice was gentle. You wanted someone to take care of you. That's not a weakness, Grace. That's human. I thought he loved me. Grace's voice broke. At our wedding, when he said his vows, I thought he meant them. Maybe he did mean them in that moment. Judith sat back down on the bed. But people like Marcus, they love the idea of things more than the reality. He loved the idea of a sweet, grateful wife who made him look good. The reality of you, a whole person with needs and opinions, that was never going to be enough. Grace wiped her eyes. I wasted 4 years. You didn't waste anything. You learned. Judith pulled Grace close again. You learned what you don't want, what you won't accept. That's valuable. I'm scared. The admission came out in a whisper. I'm so scared, Mom. What if he takes the baby? What if I can't afford a lawyer good enough? What if... Stop. Judith's voice was firm. We're not doing what ifs. We're doing one day at a time. Today you stay in this bed. You keep that baby safe. You let the fancy lawyer and the billionaire father-in-law handle the paperwork. Tomorrow we'll figure out tomorrow. Grace tried to believe her, but in the back of her mind, Marcus's words echoed. You're nothing without me. You'll sign whatever I put in front of you, or you'll watch me take everything. She touched her belly, felt her daughter move. I won't let him take you, she promised. Whatever it costs, whatever I have to do, he's not taking you. The baby kicked in response. Grace closed her eyes and imagined a different life. A small apartment, her mother's help, maybe going back to teaching eventually. It wouldn't be the life she'd planned, but it would be real, honest. It would be hers. Dr. Shaw released Grace from intensive monitoring around noon, but insisted she stay in the hospital for at least another 24 hours. Your blood pressure is still concerning, she explained while checking the charts. 155 over 90. Better than yesterday, but not good enough for me to let you go home. Home, the word felt strange now. Grace had been living in Theodore's mansion since the wedding. 8,000 square feet of marble floors and cathedral ceilings. A house that had never felt like home. Just a museum where she was afraid to touch anything. Where would I even go? Grace asked quietly. Dr. Shaw paused. That's a fair question. Do you have family, friends? My mother has a one-bedroom apartment. Grace pulled the blanket higher. And I don't really have friends anymore. Marcus said his social circle was more appropriate for my new position. My old friends from teaching, they stopped calling after I missed too many dinners. The admission hurt. Grace had let her friendships die, had convinced herself that Marcus's world was enough, that being Mrs. Blackwell was a suitable replacement for the messiness of real connections. I'm sorry, Dr. Shaw said. That's a difficult position to be in. It's my own fault. I should have tried harder. Grace, Dr. Shaw sat down. Can I tell you something? I've been an OB/GYN for 20 years. I've seen a lot of marriages, a lot of relationships, and there's a pattern I notice. Women who end up isolated from their support systems usually didn't choose that isolation. It was chosen for them, slowly, subtly, until one day they look around and realize they are completely alone. Grace's throat tightened. He never told me not to see my friends. Did he have to, or did he just make it uncomfortable enough that you stopped yattering? Grace thought about missed calls, about Marcus's comments when she came home from lunch with her teacher friends. Nothing was quite nice enough. Your friends are sweet, but they don't really understand our lifestyle. Maybe it's better to focus on building relationships that can help my career. You understand, don't you? She'd understood, and she'd stopped calling her friends back. I did this to myself, she whispered. No, you survived the situation you were in. Dr. Shaw's voice was firm. There's a difference, and Grace, you're still surviving. That's all you need to do right now, just survive. After Dr. Shaw left, Grace lay in the quiet room and let herself remember. Really remember, not the edited version she'd been telling herself for 4 years. The version where Marcus was complicated but loving, where their marriage was difficult but worthwhile. She remembered their first date, expensive restaurant, wine that cost more than her weekly grocery budget. Marcus had ordered for both of them without asking what she wanted. At the time, she'd found it charming. Take charge. Confident. Now she saw it differently. Controlling. She remembered meeting his family. Theodore's assessing gaze. Helen's polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. The way Marcus had squeezed her hands so hard, it hurt whenever she said something he thought was wrong. She remembered the proposal. 6 months after they started dating, Marcus had taken her to a hotel rooftop. A string quartet played, rose petals everywhere. He'd gotten down on one knee with a ring so big it looked fake. Marry me, Grace. Let me take care of you. You'll never have to worry about money again. She'd said yes immediately. Who wouldn't? A handsome, wealthy man wanted to save her from student loans, in a cramped apartment, and a job that barely paid enough to survive. She'd thought it was a fairy tale. Now she saw the transaction. Marcus needed a wife. The trust fund from his grandmother required marriage and children by age 35. He'd been 33 when they met. Running out of time. Grace had been convenient, pretty enough, young enough, grateful enough to not ask difficult questions. The wedding came back in fragments. 8 months of planning. Helen had taken over most of it. The venue was too grand, the dress too expensive. 300 guests Grace didn't know. She'd wanted something small, her mother and a few friends. Marcus had laughed. We can't have a small wedding. People would think we were ashamed. Her mother had looked beautiful that day. Grace remembered Judith in the borrowed dress, tears streaming down her face during the ceremony. Grace had thought they were happy tears. Now she wondered if her mother had been crying for different reasons. The honeymoon in Bali. 2 weeks in a resort so luxurious it felt like another planet. Marcus had been attentive at first, but halfway through his phone started ringing constantly. Work emergencies, important deals. He'd spent their last week at the resort in the business center, while Grace sat alone by the pool, coming home to the mansion. Grace had been excited to finally decorate, to make the space feel like theirs. Helen had shut that down immediately. The house has been in the family for 3 generations. We don't redecorate for trends. Grace had tried. She'd bought throw pillows, a new lamp for the bedroom, small changes. Marcus had returned everything. My mother is right. We need to respect the house's history. The first year of marriage was a blur of adjustment. Grace had quit teaching at Marcus's insistence. You don't need to work anymore. Focus on supporting my career, on learning how to be a proper wife. She'd tried to learn, attended the right charity events, wore the right clothes, smiled at the right people, made herself useful at Marcus's business dinners. She remembered one dinner particularly well, 8 months after the wedding. Marcus's business partners and their wives. Grace had tried to contribute to the conversation about a new education initiative. She'd been a teacher. She had relevant experience. Marcus had laughed. Grace, these are policy discussions. Let the people who understand economics handle it. The other women had looked at her with pity. Grace had excused herself to the bathroom and cried. That was the first time she'd thought about leaving. The first time she'd looked at her phone and considered calling her mother to come get her. She hadn't called. She'd washed her face, reapplied her makeup, and gone back to the table. She'd told herself every marriage was hard, that she needed to try harder, be better. The second year was when Marcus started staying late at work. Grace would wait up for him, dinner cold on the table. He'd come home after midnight, sometimes after 2, smelling like whiskey and expensive perfume that wasn't hers. She'd asked once, just once, "Where were you?" Marcus had looked at her with disgust. "I was working, building a career to support your lifestyle. Maybe try being grateful instead of suspicious." She'd apologized. She always apologized. The third year they'd started trying for a baby. Marcus's idea, not hers. "My grandmother's trust requires an heir. We need to get this done." Get this done like pregnancy was a business transaction. It had taken 8 months. 8 months of scheduled sex that felt more like obligation than intimacy. 8 months of ovulation kits and disappointment. When Grace finally got pregnant, Marcus had been thrilled for about a week. Then the reality set in. Morning sickness. Fatigue. Grace wasn't the perfect, useful wife anymore. She was tired and hormonal and craving things that weren't on her diet plan. Marcus started traveling more. Business trips that lasted a week at a time. He'd call once a day, perfunctory conversations about nothing important. Grace had been lonely. So lonely she'd considered getting a dog just to have something to care for. Her mother had visited once, 6 months into the pregnancy. Judith had taken one look at Grace's face and said, "Baby, are you happy?" Grace had lied. Of course, why wouldn't I be? Judith hadn't believed her, but she hadn't pushed. Just hugged Grace and said, "If you ever need me, I'm here." The fourth year, 7 months pregnant now, on bed rest because her blood pressure wouldn't come down. The doctor said it was stress. Grace knew they were right. Living with Marcus had become an exercise in walking on eggshells. Never knowing what would set him off, never knowing if she was being a good enough wife. And then Sienna. Grace had met her at a company party 5 months ago. Tall, gorgeous, confident. The kind of woman Marcus would actually want. Not some former teacher he'd married out of convenience. Grace had watched them together. The way Marcus laughed at Sienna's jokes. The way he touched her arm. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing she could point to and say this is wrong. But she'd known and done nothing. Because what could she do? She was 7 months pregnant, financially dependent, legally tied to a man who didn't love her. She had no power, no options, or so she'd thought. Now, lying in this hospital bed, Grace realized something. She'd been thinking about her situation wrong. She'd been asking, how do I save my marriage? The real question was, why would I want to? Marcus didn't love her, probably never had. He'd married her for convenience and stayed for the baby. He'd systematically isolated her, controlled her, and was now planning to destroy her completely. Why was she trying to hold on to that? The door opened. Theodore entered, followed by a woman Grace didn't recognize. 50-ish, professional, carrying a large briefcase. "Grace," Theodore said, This is Sandra Morrison. She's a forensic handwriting analyst. She's going to verify that the signatures on those documents aren't yours. Sandra smiled. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Blackwell. I know this is a difficult time. I'll try to make this as quick as possible. For the next hour, Grace provided handwriting samples. Her signature over and over. Different pens, different pressures. Sandra photographed everything, made notes, compared samples to the forged documents. These are definitely not your signatures, Sandra said finally. The forger is good, very good, but there are tells. The pressure points are wrong. The flow is too uniform. Real handwriting has natural variations. These don't. Can you prove it in court? Theodore asked. Absolutely. I'll prepare a full report. Sandra packed up her equipment. Mrs. Blackwell, whoever did this, went to considerable effort. This wasn't spur of the moment. This was planned and executed carefully. After Sandra left, Theodore sat down heavily. He looked older today, tired. I've known my son was flawed. I didn't know he was capable of this. Why is he? Grace asked. Why would he go to this much trouble? If he wanted a divorce, why not just ask for one? Because a simple divorce wouldn't give him what he wants. Theodore pulled out his phone and showed Grace a document. This is my grandmother's trust, the one Marcus is desperate to access. It requires marriage and a legitimate heir. But there's a clause. If the beneficiary divorces for cause, if the spouse can prove abuse or abandonment, the trust goes to the next heir. Ethan, Theodore nodded. My younger son, the one Marcus has spent his life competing with. If you divorce Marcus and prove fault, he loses everything. $30 million. He'd still have his company, but the trust would be gone. So he was going to divorce me first. Grace understood now. Make it look like I was unstable, that I was the problem. That way the divorce couldn't be considered his fault. Exactly. And by setting you up for fraud, he'd ensure you couldn't fight back. You'd be too busy defending yourself against criminal charges. Grace felt sick. He was going to send me to prison. Or at least threaten you with prison until you signed away your rights to everything, including your daughter. The baby kicked. Grace's hand went to her belly automatically. He doesn't even want her. Not really. She's just a requirement for the trust. I know. Theodore's voice was thick with grief. I'm sorry, Grace. I'm sorry I raised a son capable of this. It's not your fault, isn't it? Theodore looked at his hands. Helen tried to tell me. Years ago, she said Marcus had no empathy, no real connection to other people. He was charming and intelligent, but something was missing. I didn't listen. I told myself he'd mature, that having his own family would teach him what real love meant. What did it teach him? That people are tools. Theodore's expression was bleak. My son sees the whole world as a chess game. You were a convenient piece. Now you're inconvenient. So he's removing you from the board. Grace should have been devastated, should have been crying. Instead, she felt oddly calm. The truth, however ugly, was better than uncertainty. What happens now? She asked. Now we fight back. No, Theodore stood up. I've frozen Marcus's company accounts. All of them. As the primary investor, I have that authority. He can't access funds until we complete a full audit. He'll be furious. He already is. I've gotten 17 calls from his lawyer in the last 2 hours. Theodore's smile was grim. Let him be furious. Fury makes people careless. In Grace, we need him careless. What? Because right now we have evidence of forgery and fraud, but we need more. We need to prove Sienna's attack was coordinated. We need bank records showing where the money went. We need communications proving Marcus planned this. Theodore moved to the window. My security team is working on it. Owen is very good at finding things people want hidden. Grace thought about Owen, the steady, quiet man outside her door. Who is he, really? Former Secret Service. He protected presidents. Now he protects me. Theodore glanced back at her, and by extension, you. Why are you doing this? Grace asked again. Really, what do you get out of helping me? Theodore was quiet for a long moment. Do you know why I built my empire, Grace? Why I spent 40 years accumulating wealth and power? To win? To prove I was worth something. Theodore's voice was soft. I grew up poor. My father was a construction worker. My mother cleaned houses. I watched them work themselves to death for pennies. I promised myself I'd be different. I'd be powerful enough that no one could hurt me. You succeeded. I did. And in the process, I became someone who valued power over people. I married Helen because she came from the right family. I raised my sons to be winners, not human beings. I built something impressive and cold. He turned to face her. You know what I realized yesterday? When I saw you in that hospital bed, terrified and hurt, protecting your baby? Grace shook her head. I realized I have all this power, all this money, and I've never used it for anything that mattered. I've built buildings and made deals and crushed competitors, but I've never protected someone who needed it, never used my resources for something good. Theodore's eyes were wet. Let me do this, Grace. Let me be the man I should have been all along. Grace didn't know what to say. This vulnerable, honest Theodore was a stranger. But maybe that was okay. Maybe they were all becoming strangers to themselves, shedding old skins to find out who they really were underneath. Okay, she said finally. We'll fight. Theodore nodded. Get some rest. Tomorrow, Vivian will file the criminal charges. After that, things will move quickly. After he left, Grace lay in the quiet room and thought about the woman she'd been 4 years ago. Young, hopeful, naive, that Grace had believed in fairy tales, had thought love could conquer anything. This Grace knew better. Love didn't conquer. It didn't save. It didn't magically fix broken people or toxic situations, but maybe sometimes other things could help. Money, power, a father-in-law who'd finally decided to be decent. It wasn't the fairy tale, but it might be enough. The news broke at 7 the next morning. Grace woke to her phone buzzing constantly, notifications piling up faster than she could read them. She grabbed it, confused, still groggy from the sedative Dr. Shaw had finally convinced her to take. The top result was from a major news outlet. Prominent tech CEO's wife attacked by husband's alleged mistress in hospital. Criminal charges filed. Grace's hands started shaking. She clicked the link. There was a photo of her from the charity gala 6 months ago. She looked young in it, happy, naive. The article detailed everything. Sienna's attack, the assault charges, Marcus's company. But there was more. Information Grace hadn't known was public. Details about the forged signatures, the offshore accounts, the SEC investigation that had apparently been opened overnight. She kept scrolling. More articles. Blackwell Empire in crisis says son faces fraud allegations. Billionaire Theodore Blackwell disavows son following hospital assault. Tech startup CEO accused of identity theft against pregnant wife. It was everywhere, every major news outlet, every gossip blog. Twitter was exploding with hashtags. Had Justice for Grace trending at #3 nationally. Her door burst open. Not Owen this time. Vivian, already dressed for court, looking grimly satisfied. You've seen the news, Vivian said. It wasn't a question. How did this happen? How did everyone find out? Your father-in-law. Vivian sat down and pulled out her tablet. He held a press conference at 6 this morning, showed the security footage from the hospital, showed the forged documents, showed everything. Grace felt dizzy. Why would he do that? 2 reasons. First, to control the narrative. If we go public first with all the evidence, Marcus can't spin it. He can't make you look like the villain. Vivian swiped through her tablet, showing Grace more articles. Second, to pressure him. Public scandal means losing investors, losing business partners, losing everything he's built. Theodore is betting that Marcus will make a mistake when he's desperate. What kind of mistake? The kind that gives us more evidence. Vivian's smile was sharp. Angry people do stupid things, Grace. Your husband is about to do something very stupid. Grace wasn't sure how she felt about that. Part of her was still the woman who'd loved Marcus, who'd said vows and meant them. That part felt sick about destroying him publicly. But a larger part, a harder part, remembered Sienna's hands on the IV stand. Remembered Marcus's threat. You'll sign whatever I put in front of you, or you'll watch me take everything. That part wasn't sorry at all. There's more. Vivian pulled out a document. Sienna's lawyer contacted me this morning. She wants to make a deal. Testimony against Marcus in exchange for reduced charges. She'll testify against him. She'll testify that Marcus sent her to the hospital, that he gave her your room number and told her to intimidate you into signing divorce papers. She'll testify that they've been in a relationship for 8 months, that he promised to leave you and marry her once the baby was born. Vivian's expression was neutral. The question is whether you want to accept the deal. Grace thought about Sienna, the attack, the pain, the fear. Did she want the woman who'd endangered her baby to get a reduced sentence? What would she get? Grace asked. Probably probation, community service, maybe a few months in county jail instead of state prison. And if we don't take the deal? Then it's her word against Marcus's. We might lose the testimony entirely. Grace looked down at her hands. Her wedding ring glinted in the morning light. She'd been wearing it automatically, hadn't even thought about taking it off. Now she twisted it around her finger, feeling the weight of it. Take the deal, she said finally. We need the testimony. Vivian nodded. I'll let her lawyer know. After Vivian left, Grace sat with the decision. Was she being smart or vindictive? Strategic or cruel? The lines blurred together. Her phone buzzed again. A text from a number she didn't recognize. Unknown. You're making a huge mistake. Grace stared at the message. Then another came through. Unknown. Everything you're doing, it's going to backfire. You can't win against me. Unknown. I gave you everything. You were nothing before me. You'll be nothing after. Unknown. You want to play games? Fine. But when I destroy you, don't say I didn't warn you. Grace's hands clenched around the phone. She should have been scared. Should have been intimidated. Instead, she felt something hot and fierce bloom in her chest. Rage. Pure, clean rage. She screenshot the messages and sent them to Vivian with a single word. Evidence. Then she blocked the number. Her mother arrived around 9 with clean clothes and breakfast from the good bakery downtown. Judith took one look at Grace's face and said, "What happened?" Grace told her about the press conference, the news coverage, the threatening texts. Judith's expression darkened. That boy has no idea what he started. I think he knows exactly what he started. Grace bit into a croissant, surprised to find she was actually hungry. He just doesn't know he's going to lose. That's my girl. Judith squeezed her hand. Now eat. You need to keep your strength up. They were halfway through breakfast when Owen knocked and poked his head in. Mrs. Blackwell, there's someone here to see you. Says he's Marcus's brother? Ethan. Grace had almost forgotten about him. Marcus's younger brother, the one Theodore had mentioned. The black sheep. Let him in, Grace said. Ethan Blackwell looked nothing like Marcus. Where Marcus was polished and perfect, Ethan was rumpled and real. Early 30s, wearing jeans and a paint-stained shirt, with their father's eyes but their mother's softer features. He carried himself like someone who'd stopped trying to impress people years ago. Grace, he stood awkwardly in the doorway. I'm sorry to barge in. I wanted to see if you were okay. I'm alive. Grace gestured to the chair. That's something. Ethan sat down. He looked at Judith, then back at Grace. I saw the news. I'm so sorry. I wish I could say I was surprised, but you're not? Marcus has been doing this his whole life. Ethan's voice was tired. Finding vulnerable people and using them. I tried to warn my father years ago. He didn't listen. What do you mean this whole life? Grace asked. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Has Marcus ever told you about Sophie? Who's Sophie? My girlfriend, when I was 19. Ethan's hands clenched. We'd been together for 2 years. She was smart, funny, kind. Everything I thought I wanted. Then Marcus came home from college for Christmas break. Grace already knew where this was going. He seduced her. Worse, he convinced her I was cheating. Showed her fake evidence. Texts he'd fabricated. Photos he'd doctored. She believed him. We broke up. She turned to Marcus for comfort. Ethan's voice was flat, emotionless. 6 months later, she was gone. Moved across the country. Wouldn't return my calls. What did Marcus get out of that? My trust fund. Ethan looked up. Same trust Marcus is trying to protect now. Our grandmother left money for both of us, but there was a clause. If one of us was deemed unfit, the money could be redirected. Marcus told my parents I was using drugs, that Sophie had left because I'd hit her, all lies. But by the time I proved it, the damage was done. I lost access to the trust for 5 years. Grace felt sick. He destroyed your relationship for money. He destroys everything for money, or power, or just because he can. Ethan leaned forward. Grace, I'm telling you this because I want you to understand. What he's doing to you, it's not personal. You could have been perfect, and he still would have destroyed you. Because that's what Marcus does. Why are you telling me this now? Why not before? Because I didn't know you'd been targeted until yesterday. Ethan's voice was earnest. Marcus and I don't talk. Haven't in years. I had no idea he'd gotten married. No idea he had a baby on the way. If I'd known, I would have warned you. Judith, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. You're telling Grace that your brother is essentially a sociopath. I'm telling Grace that my brother is very good at appearing normal while destroying people systematically. Ethan met Grace's eyes, and I'm offering to help. Whatever evidence you need, whatever testimony would be useful. I'll do it. Why? Grace asked. What do you get out of helping me? Ethan smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. The satisfaction of watching Marcus finally face consequences. For the first time in his life, he can't charm or buy or manipulate his way out of this, because my father has finally seen him clearly. In Grace, Theodore is terrifying when he decides to destroy something. He's your father too. Doesn't this hurt you? My father wrote me off years ago, believed Marcus's lies about me. Ethan's voice was steady, but Grace heard the old pain underneath. If helping you means earning back even a fraction of his respect, then yeah, I'll do it. But mostly I'm doing it because what Marcus did to you is unforgivable, and someone needs to stop him before he ruins another life. Grace studied Ethan. He seemed sincere, but she'd thought Marcus was sincere too. I'll think about it, she said finally. Ethan nodded. He pulled out a business card. My number. If you need anything, call me, day or night. After he left, Judith picked up the card. You trust him? I don't trust anyone named Blackwell. Grace took the card back. But I believe his story. It sounds like Marcus. Your husband is a monster, Judith said bluntly. You know that now, right? Grace did know. The evidence was overwhelming, the pattern clear. But knowing intellectually and accepting emotionally were different things. Part of her still wanted to believe there was some explanation, some misunderstanding. That part was getting smaller every day. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Theodore. Grace, he said without preamble. Marcus's lawyer just filed an emergency motion. He's requesting immediate visitation rights. Says he's being denied access to his unborn child. What does that mean? It means he's trying to force his way back into your life. The hearing is this afternoon. Vivian will handle it, but you need to be prepared. The judge may want to hear from you directly. I'm on bed rest. I can't go to court. The judge will come here. It'll be informal, but it's still legal proceedings. Theodore's voice was tense. Grace, Marcus is desperate. Desperate people are dangerous. Owen will stay with you. Don't let anyone in without his approval. After Theodore hung up, Grace sat very still. Through the window, she could see the city. People going about their lives, working, shopping, existing in a world where husbands didn't forge signatures and send mistresses to attack pregnant wives. She wanted to be in that world, the normal one. Instead, she was here, in a hospital bed, preparing for a legal battle she never wanted. The anger that had been simmering all morning flared hotter. She was done being passive, done apologizing, done trying to understand why Marcus was destroying her. She didn't care why anymore. She just wanted him to stop. And if he wouldn't stop voluntarily, then she'd make him stop, whatever it took. Grace pulled out her phone and called Vivian. Whatever you need me to say at this hearing, I'll say it. I'm done protecting Marcus. Good. Vivian's voice held approval. Then let's give that judge an earful about what kind of father Marcus would be. Grace smiled. It wasn't a nice smile, but it felt honest. For the first time in 4 years, Grace Patterson Blackwell was angry. Really, truly angry, and she was done being quiet about it. The judge arrived at 2 in the afternoon. Honorable Patricia Morrison, 60-ish, with steel gray hair in an expression that suggested she'd seen every manipulation tactic in the book. She sat up at the small table in Grace's hospital room, her court reporter beside her with a stenography machine balanced on her lap. Marcus's lawyer appeared via video conference on a tablet. Richard Chen, expensive suit, slick back hair, the kind of attorney who charged $1,000 an hour and earned every penny by being ruthless. Vivian sat beside Grace's hospital bed, legal pads ready, pen poised like a weapon. "This is highly irregular," Judge Morrison said, looking around the hospital room. "But given Mrs. Blackwell's medical condition, I'm allowing it. Mr. Chen, your client has filed an emergency motion for visitation rights regarding the unborn child. Explain your reasoning." Chen's face on the screen was perfectly composed. "Your Honor, my client has been denied access to his wife and unborn child for 36 hours. He's made multiple attempts to visit the hospital. He's been blocked by private security acting under orders from Theodore Blackwell, who has no legal authority to prevent a husband from seeing his wife." "Mrs. Blackwell," Judge Morrison turned to Grace, "did you personally instruct security to deny your husband access?" Grace took a breath. Her voice came out steady. "Yes, Your Honor." "Why?" "Because 2 days ago, my husband sent his mistress to my hospital room. She physically attacked me while I was on bed rest at 34 weeks pregnant. She had my room number and security codes that only my husband knew. She told me he sent her to make me sign divorce papers." Judge Morrison's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. "You've filed assault charges against this mistress?" "Yes, Your Honor. The DA is prosecuting." "Mr. Chen," Judge Morrison said, "your client denies these allegations?" "Strenuously, Your Honor. Marcus Blackwell had no knowledge of Sienna Vale's intentions. Ms. Vale is emotionally unstable. She's being treated for borderline personality disorder. She became obsessed with my client and misinterpreted professional conversations as romantic interest." Vivian spoke up. "Your Honor, Ms. Vale has agreed to testify that Marcus Blackwell explicitly sent her to intimidate Mrs. Blackwell. We have text messages between them discussing the visit to the hospital." "Fabricated," Chen said smoothly. "Ms. Vale has a documented history of creating false narratives to gain attention." "What about the forged signatures?" Vivian pulled out documents. "Mrs. Blackwell's name appears on $800,000 in loans she never signed. Forensic analysis confirms forgery. Your client has been systematically defrauding his wife while planning to divorce her and take full custody of their child." Chen's expression tightened. "These allegations are unproven and inflammatory. My client has been subjected to a public smear campaign orchestrated by his father, who has financial motivations for destroying Marcus's reputation." Judge Morrison held up a hand. "I've read the preliminary filings. The criminal investigation into the fraud allegations is ongoing. Today, we're only addressing the visitation question." She looked at Grace. "Mrs. Blackwell, do you believe your husband poses a threat to you or your baby?" Grace met the judge's eyes. "Yes, Your Honor." "On what basis?" This was it. The moment Grace had to be honest, not diplomatic, not trying to make Marcus look better, just honest. "My husband married me because he needed a wife to access his trust fund. He's been planning to divorce me since before our wedding. He forged my signature on loan documents to frame me for fraud. When I was 7 months pregnant and vulnerable in a hospital bed, he sent another woman to attack me. His only concern has been protecting his money and his reputation. He's never once asked if our baby is okay." Grace's voice didn't shake. "A man who would do that to me would do worse to our child. I won't give him the chance." Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Mr. Chen, your client is present for this hearing." "He's in my office, Your Honor. I can bring him on screen if you'd like to speak with him." "Please." The screen split. Marcus appeared sitting in an office that screamed wealth and power. He'd dressed carefully. Conservative suit, neutral tie, perfect hair. He looked concerned but reasonable. The mask he'd worn for years. Grace's stomach turned. "Mr. Blackwell," Judge Morrison said, "your wife has made serious allegations. She says you sent another woman to physically attack her in the hospital. What's your response?" Marcus's expression was perfect wounded innocence. "Your Honor, I love my wife. This entire situation has been a nightmare." Sienna Vale is a disturbed woman who became obsessed with me. I tried to let her down gently to avoid professional repercussions. She misinterpreted my kindness as encouragement. When she learned about Grace's hospitalization, she went there on her own initiative. You didn't give her the room number? Absolutely not. She must have obtained it through other means. Hospital security isn't perfect. What about the forged signatures? I have no knowledge of any forged signatures. If there are discrepancies in financial documents, they're likely clerical errors. My wife has been under tremendous stress during her pregnancy. Her blood pressure issues have been concerning. I wonder if that stress has affected her judgment. There it was, the subtle implication that Grace was hysterical, unstable, unreliable. Judge Morrison's expression didn't reveal her thoughts. Mr. Blackwell, when was the last time you asked about your baby's health? Marcus blinked. The question had caught him off guard. I'm sorry? Your wife was attacked in the hospital 2 days ago. Your unborn child's heart rate became irregular. There were concerns about premature labor. When did you last inquire about your daughter's condition? The silence stretched. Marcus's perfect mask slipped for just a moment, long enough for Judge Morrison to see what Grace had always known. He didn't care. I've been denied access, Marcus said finally. How am I supposed to check on the baby when I can't even speak to my wife? You have a phone. Your wife has a phone. You sent her 23 text messages according to her records. Not one asked about the baby's health. Judge Morrison's voice was cold. Mr. Blackwell, I'm denying your emergency motion. You will have no visitation rights to the baby before birth. After birth, we'll schedule a hearing to discuss supervised visitation contingent on the outcome of the criminal investigations. Your Honor, Chen protested, that's highly unusual. So is sending your mistress to attack your pregnant wife. Judge Morrison closed her folder. If the criminal charges are dismissed and the fraud allegations are disproven, Mr. Blackwell can refile. Until then, this motion is denied. We're adjourned. When the screen went dark, Judge Morrison stood, gathering her materials. She looked at Grace. Mrs. Blackwell, I've been on the bench for 23 years. I've seen a lot of ugly divorces. This one concerns me. Be careful. Men like your husband don't lose gracefully. Thank you, Your Honor, Grace said quietly. After everyone left, Grace sat in the silence of her hospital room. Owen was outside. Her mother had gone home to sleep after 2 days of staying awake. Dr. Shaw would be by later for evening rounds. Grace was alone with her thoughts for the first time since the attack. She touched her belly. The baby was active today, moving constantly, little flutters and kicks, signs of life, signs of the future Grace was fighting for. Your father doesn't love us, she whispered. Maybe he never did, but I love you so much. I'm going to make sure you're safe, whatever it costs. The baby kicked in response. Grace smiled despite everything. Her phone buzzed. A text from Theodore. The judge made the right call. Marcus will appeal, but we bought time. Then another text. Owen tells me you haven't eaten dinner. He's bringing something from that Italian place you like. Please eat. Grace hadn't realized Owen had been paying attention to her food preferences. Hadn't realized Theodore had been either. Another text, this time from Vivian. Good job today. Your testimony was perfect. You're stronger than you think. Grace read that message twice. Stronger than you think. Was she? She didn't feel strong. She felt exhausted, scared, overwhelmed, but she was still here, still fighting. Maybe that was enough. Around 7, Maria came in to check her blood pressure. 148/86, she announced. Better. Not great, but better. Is that good enough to go home? Maria hesitated. Dr. Shaw wants you here at least another day, maybe 2. Your blood pressure is still borderline. Where is home anyway? Grace asked. Bamans. I can't go back to the mansion. I can't stay with my mother in her 1-bedroom apartment. Where am I supposed to go? One problem at a time, honey. Maria adjusted the IV. Right now you're safe here. That's enough. But it wasn't enough. Eventually Grace would have to leave this room, face the world, build a life for herself and her baby, with nothing except what Theodore's lawyers could secure for her. Owen knocked and entered carrying bags from the Italian restaurant. The smell made Grace's stomach growl. Mr. Blackwell said to get whatever you wanted, I guessed. He'd guessed well. Pasta carbonara, her favorite. Bread, salad, cannoli for dessert. Thank you, Grace said. Just doing my job. But Owen smiled. He set everything up on the hospital tray table. Eat, you need your strength. After he left, Grace ate mechanically. The food was delicious, but tasted like cardboard. Everything tasted like cardboard now. She was scrolling through her phone, avoiding the news coverage that wouldn't stop, when she saw a notification. Someone had tagged her in a video. Grace almost didn't click it. She'd been tagged in hundreds of things since the story broke. Most were supportive, some were vicious. Women she'd never met calling her a gold digger. Men calling her worse. But something made her click, this one. The video was from a woman maybe 30 years old, sitting in what looked like a modest living room. She was crying. I don't normally make videos like this, the woman said, wiping her eyes. But I saw Grace Blackwell's story, and I have to say something. 5 years ago, I was in an almost identical situation. Rich husband, pregnant, isolated. He had me believing I was crazy, that I was the problem. When I finally tried to leave, he threatened to take my baby, said I'd never see my son again. The woman took a shaky breath. I stayed. For 3 more years, I stayed. Because I was scared. Because I thought I couldn't fight back. Because women like us, we don't have the resources to fight men like that. She looked directly at the camera. Grace, if you see this, thank you. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for not staying quiet. Thank you for showing women like me that we don't have to accept being destroyed. I left my husband 6 months ago. I'm still fighting for custody. But I'm fighting because of women like you. The video ended. Grace sat staring at the screen. There were thousands of comments, other women sharing similar stories. Abuse, gaslighting, financial control, legal manipulation. So many women who'd lived versions of Grace's life. She'd thought she was alone. Thought her situation was unique. Thought somehow she'd failed where other women succeeded. But she wasn't alone. She'd never been alone. Grace opened her messages and typed, I'm fighting for all of us. She posted it with a link to the woman's video. Within minutes, it had hundreds of likes, thousands of shares. Grace wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every woman who'd been told she was nothing. Every woman who'd been isolated and controlled. Every woman who'd stayed because she thought she had no choice. That weight should have been crushing. Instead, it felt like purpose. 3 in the morning. The hospital was quiet except for the distant beep of monitors and occasional footsteps of nurses making rounds. Grace lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting the tiles for the 100th time. 37 tiles. Always 37. The baby was restless tonight, moving constantly, little feet pushing against Grace's ribs. She pressed her hand to the spot, feeling the shape of her daughter through skin and muscle and amniotic fluid. Can't sleep either, she whispered. Another kick. Harder this time. Grace's phone glowed on the bedside table. 4:17 in the morning now. She'd been lying here for hours, watching the minutes crawl past. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus's face on that video screen. The cold calculation behind his perfect mask. She'd married him, slept beside him for 4 years. How had she not seen it? But she had seen it. That was the truth Grace couldn't escape. She'd seen the signs, the way Marcus controlled everything from her clothes to her friendships to how she spent her days, the way he dismissed her opinions, the way he made her feel small. She'd seen it and told herself she was being oversensitive, demanding, ungrateful. Grace picked up her phone, scrolled through old photos without thinking about what she was doing. Her and Marcus at their wedding. She looked so happy, so young. Did she really look happy, or had she just been good at performing happiness? More photos, their honeymoon, Marcus's arm around her shoulders, his smile perfect for the camera. Grace leaning into him like he was her whole world. He had been her whole world. She'd made him her whole world because she thought that's what wives did, what good wives did. A photo from last Christmas. Marcus's family gathered in the mansion's formal living room. Theodore in his chair, Helen on the sofa, Ethan absent as always. Marcus and Grace standing by the fireplace, her hand on her barely visible baby bump. Marcus's hand on top of hers. It looked like a family. It looked like love. Grace deleted the photo, then the next one, then all of them. 4 years of carefully curated images disappearing one by one. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I saw your post. I've been there. You're so brave. Then another, thank you for fighting. My daughter needs to see women like you. And another, 7 years I stayed. 7 years I thought I was crazy. Your story made me realize I'm not alone. Grace read them all. Dozens of messages from women she'd never met. Women who saw themselves in her story. Women who were fighting their own battles or had already escaped or were still trapped. So many women. Grace wanted to respond to each one individually, but the words stuck in her throat. What could she say? She wasn't brave. She was terrified. She was only fighting because Theodore had given her the resources to fight. Without him, she'd be exactly where these women were. Trapped, helpless, alone. A soft knock at the door. Owen stuck his head in. Heard you moving around. Everything okay? Can't sleep. Grace put down her phone. Did I wake you? I don't really sleep on duty. Owen came in, leaving the door open behind him. You want me to call a nurse? Maybe they can give you something. No, I don't want more sedatives. They make my brain foggy. Grace shifted in the bed, trying to find a comfortable position. Impossible at 34 weeks pregnant. Owen, can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you doing this? I know Theodore is paying you, but this is more than just a job, right? Sitting outside my door for 3 days, bringing me dinner, checking on me in the middle of the night. Owen was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat down. You remind me of my daughter. Grace hadn't expected that. You have a daughter? Had. Owen's voice was careful. She died 8 years ago. Car accident. 26 years old. I'm sorry. She was married to a man a lot like your husband. Charming, successful, controlling. We didn't see it at first. By the time we did, she was too deep in to leave easily. He'd isolated her from us, made her financially dependent, convinced her she was the problem. Grace's chest tightened. What happened? She tried to leave. He threatened her. She came to us for help, and we told her to go back, to try harder, to make it work because that's what marriage meant. Owen's hands clenched. 3 months later, she was dead. The accident was probably just an accident, but I'll never know if she was upset that day, if she was running from him, if she was so stressed she was not paying attention to the road. Owen, I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because you're doing what my daughter couldn't do. You're fighting back. You're accepting help. You're not trying to survive it alone yet. He met Grace's eyes. So yeah, maybe this is more than a job. Maybe I'm protecting you because I couldn't protect her. Or maybe I just think you deserve someone in your corner. Grace felt tears sliding down her face. She'd been crying a lot lately. Too much. But these tears felt different. Not sad tears. Grateful tears. Thank you, she whispered. Get some sleep. Or try to. Owen stood up. I'll be right outside if you need anything. After he left, Grace lay very still. The baby had settled down, finally quiet. Grace pressed both hands to her belly and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. Fear. So much fear. What if Theodore changed his mind? What if Marcus found a way to win? What if Grace ended up alone with a baby and no resources and nowhere to go? What if she wasn't strong enough? I don't know how to do this, she whispered to her daughter. I don't know how to be a single mother. I don't know how to support us. I quit my mom. I let him take everything. I don't even know who I am anymore without him. The baby shifted, a gentle movement. I'm scared, Grace admitted. I'm so scared. What if I fail you? What if I'm not enough? Silence, just the beep of monitors and the hum of hospital machinery. Grace closed her eyes, thought about the women who'd texted her, the ones who'd shared their stories, the ones still fighting. They were scared too. They didn't have all the answers either, but they were fighting anyway. Maybe that was enough. Maybe the courage wasn't in knowing you'd win. Maybe it was in deciding to fight even when you were terrified, even when you had no idea if you'd survive. Grace thought about her mother. Judith had raised her alone after Grace's father left. working double shifts, making sacrifices, never once complaining that life had been unfair. Grace had asked her when she was 12 and starting to understand how hard things were. Mom, how did you do it alone? Judith had said, I did it because you needed me to. That's what mothers do, baby. We do impossible things because the alternative is letting our children down. At 12, Grace had thought that sounded noble, heroic. Now, at 29 and pregnant and terrified, she understood it differently. Her mother hadn't felt heroic. She'd been scared, overwhelmed, exhausted. But she'd kept going anyway because Grace needed her to keep going. I'll keep going, Grace promised her daughter. I don't know how yet. I don't have all the answers, but I'll figure it out because you need me to. The baby kicked once, soft, almost like agreement. Grace finally fell asleep around 5. When she woke, it was 9:30, and Dershaw was standing beside her bed reviewing charts. Morning, Dershaw said. How are you feeling? Tired, overwhelmed, terrified. Grace sat up slowly. The usual. Dershaw smiled slyly. Your blood pressure is improving. 138/82. Still not perfect, but trending in the right direction. Can I leave? Maybe tomorrow, if it stays stable. Shaw sat down. Grace, I want to talk to you about something. After you leave here, where are you planning to go? I don't know. My mother's apartment is too small. The mansion isn't safe. I guess I'll figure something out. Theodore Blackwell called me this morning. He's purchased a house for you, smaller than the mansion. Security system installed, in a good neighborhood. He wants you to have somewhere safe to bring the baby home. Grace stared. He bought me a house? He's also set up a trust fund for your daughter and established an account for your living expenses until the divorce is finalized and child support is arranged. Dr. Shaw paused. I'm not telling you this to influence you. I'm telling you because you need to know what resources you have access to. A house, a trust fund, living expenses. Theodore was giving her exactly what she needed to escape Marcus completely. Why, Grace asked, and why is he doing all this? You'd have to ask him. But Grace, sometimes people try to fix their past mistakes by doing better in the present. Maybe that's what Theodore is doing. After Dr. Shaw left, Grace sat with this new information. She should have been relieved, grateful. Instead, she felt strange, untethered. For 4 years, Marcus had controlled everything, every dollar, every decision, every aspect of Grace's life. Now Theodore was giving her control back. But it didn't feel like control. It felt like responsibility. Overwhelming, terrifying responsibility. What if she made the wrong choices? What if she couldn't handle living alone? What if she failed her daughter before she was even born? Her phone buzzed. Theodore. Dr. Shaw told you about the house? Grace. Yes, thank you. It's too much. Theodore. It's not enough, but it's a start. When you're released, I'll take you to see it. If you don't like it, we'll find something else. Grace. Why are you doing this? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, Theodore. Because I should have done it 4 years ago. I'm sorry I didn't. Grace stared at that message. Theodore Blackwell apologizing. The man who'd built an empire on being right, on winning. He was sorry. That was somehow harder to process than everything else. Grace typed, I'm scared I'll let everyone down. The response came immediately. Impossible. You're already doing better than any of us had a right to expect. Just keep breathing, one day at a time, one day at a time. Grace could do that. Maybe. She looked around the hospital room. 4 days ago, she'd been brought here in crisis. Her baby in danger, her marriage in shambles, her whole life collapsing. Now she had a path forward. Not the path she'd wanted, not the fairy tale ending, but a real path with real support and real hope that maybe, possibly, she and her daughter would be okay. Grace touched her belly. We're going to have a house, she told the baby. Just you and me, and Grandma Judith, and apparently Grandpa Theodore. It's not what I planned, but maybe it'll be better than what I planned. Maybe we'll be happy. The baby kicked. Grace chose to interpret that as agreement. She could do this. She could be a single mother. She could rebuild her life. She had to, because the alternative was giving up. and Grace Patterson Blackwell was done giving up. Grace was released from the hospital on a Thursday afternoon. Dr. Shaw gave her strict instructions: bed rest at home, daily blood pressure monitoring, no stress. As if no stress was possible while living through a public divorce from a man who'd spent 4 years methodically planning her destruction. Still, Grace promised to try. Theodore sent a car, not a limo, which Grace appreciated, just a normal black sedan with Owen driving. Her mother sat beside her in the back seat, holding her hand. "You ready to see your new home?" Judith asked. Grace wasn't sure she'd ever be ready, but she nodded anyway. The house was in a neighborhood Grace had driven through but never really seen. Tree-lined streets, modest homes with actual yards, kids' bikes on porches, basketball hoops over garages. Normal, middle class. The kind of place Grace had grown up in. The kind of place she never thought she'd see again after marrying Marcus. Owen pulled into a driveway in front of a small, craftsman-style house. Blue siding, white trim, a porch with a swing. Maybe 1,500 square feet total. Compared to Theodore's mansion, it was tiny. Grace loved it immediately. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh, it's perfect." Theodore was waiting on the porch. He stood as they pulled up, looking uncertain, like he wasn't sure if Grace would approve. "It needs work," he said as Grace walked slowly up the path, Owen hovering protectively behind her. "The kitchen is outdated, the bathroom needs updating, but it's structurally sound. Good neighborhood, top-rated school district. And there's a nursery already set up upstairs." "You set up a nursery?" Grace's voice cracked. "Helen did. She wanted to help." Theodore looked embarrassed. "If you hate it, we can change everything." Grace walked through the house in a daze. Living room with hardwood floors. Small kitchen with old appliances but clean counters. 2 bedrooms upstairs. The master was simple but comfortable. White walls, big windows, an attached bathroom. The nursery made Grace cry. It was perfect, not the elaborate designer room she'd been planning in the mansion. This was simpler, softer. A white crib, a rocking chair by the window, pale yellow walls with hand-painted clouds, a bookshelf already filled with children's books. "Helen painted the clouds herself," Theodore said quietly from the doorway. "She hasn't painted in 30 years, but she wanted your daughter's room to be special." Grace touched one of the clouds. The paint was slightly uneven, clearly done by hand. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Tell her it's perfect." Over the next 2 weeks, Grace settled into the house. Judith moved in temporarily, sleeping on the pull-out couch, helping Grace navigate this new life. They established routines: morning walks around the block, afternoon naps, evening dinners at the small kitchen table. It was quiet, simple, nothing like the mansion. Grace had never been happier. The legal proceedings moved forward with brutal efficiency. Vivian filed criminal charges against Marcus: fraud, forgery, identity theft. The SEC investigation expanded. Marcus's company accounts remained frozen. His investors fled. His board of directors voted him out. Everything he'd built collapsed in 3 weeks. Sienna's testimony was damning. She provided text messages, emails, recorded phone calls. Marcus had sent her to the hospital, had told her exactly what to say, had promised her that once Grace was handled, they'd be together. The prosecution offered Marcus a deal: plead guilty to the fraud charges, accept a suspended sentence with probation, and agree to give Grace full custody with supervised visitation only. Marcus refused. "He thinks he can win," Vivian explained during one of her visits to the house. "He's hired 3 more lawyers. They're planning to argue that Theodore orchestrated everything to frame Marcus and steal his company." "Will that work?" Grace asked. "No, the evidence is overwhelming, but it'll drag everything out, make it messier, more public." Vivian's expression was grim. "Grace, you need to prepare yourself. This could take months, maybe a year, and Marcus will try every manipulation tactic he has." She was right. Marcus started a media campaign, gave interviews painting himself as the victim of his controlling father, claimed Grace had been working with Theodore all along to steal his company, posted old photos of them looking happy on social media with captions about his beloved wife, who'd been poisoned against him. The public turned on Grace again. Half the country believed Marcus's version. The other half believed hers. Grace became a lightning rod for debates about wealthy men, prenuptial agreements, and whether women could be trusted when accusing powerful husbands. Grace stopped reading the news. She focused on preparing for the baby instead. Washing tiny clothes, assembling the stroller, reading pregnancy books. Her mother helped with everything, providing commentary that kept Grace laughing even when she wanted to cry. "This stroller is more complicated than a spaceship," Judith muttered, staring at incomprehensible instructions. "Who designed this? Why does a baby need 12 different reclining positions?" "I don't know, Mom." Grace sat in the rocking chair, folding onesies. "But apparently it's essential. In my day, we had one position. Baby in, baby out. We survived." Theodore visited twice a week. He brought groceries, handled household repairs, sat awkwardly in the living room drinking coffee and attempting small talk. He was clearly trying, just as clearly out of practice at normal human interaction. "The furnace is working well," he'd say. "I had it serviced." "Thank you," Grace would reply. "The security system is top of the line. Owen tested it last week." "I appreciate it." Long silences would follow. Then Theodore would clear his throat and try again. It was oddly endearing. Helen visited less frequently, but with more emotional impact. She'd bring homemade meals, sit with Grace for hours, talk about things she'd never shared before. "I was 23 when I married Theodore," Helen said one afternoon, helping Grace fold baby blankets. "My parents arranged it. Not legally, of course, but socially. The Harringtons and the Blackwells, two powerful families combining assets. I barely knew him." "Did you love him?" Grace asked. "Eventually, in my way. He was never cruel, just absent, building his empire. I raised the boys alone, essentially. Marcus and Ethan barely knew their father until they were teenagers." Helen's hand stilled on a tiny yellow blanket. "I failed them both. Made Marcus think power was everything. Made Ethan think he could never measure up. I'm so sorry, Grace. I should have seen what Marcus was becoming." "It's not your fault." "Isn't it? I taught him that women existed to serve men's ambitions, that love was transactional, that appearances mattered more than character." Helen's voice was thick. "You're breaking that pattern, refusing to accept what I accepted, showing my granddaughter a different way. That's brave." Grace didn't feel brave. She felt terrified most of the time, but she was learning to do things while terrified, to make decisions even when she wasn't sure they were right. She hired a lawyer separate from Vivian, someone to represent just her interests, not the Blackwell family interests. She opened her own bank account with money from the fund Theodore had established. She started making plans to return to teaching part-time after the baby was old enough for daycare. Small steps toward independence. The criminal trial was set for 3 months out, but the divorce proceedings moved faster. Marcus's lawyers tried every delay tactic. Grace's team countered each one. Slowly, painfully, the case moved forward. Grace was 38 weeks pregnant when they reached the settlement negotiation phase. Too pregnant to sit in Vivian's office, so everyone came to the house. Vivian, Theodore, Judith, and Marcus's lawyer Richard Chen via video conference. "My client is prepared to offer a settlement," Chen said from the screen. "Full custody to Mrs. Blackwell. Child support of $10,000 monthly. Division of marital assets according to California law. In exchange, Mrs. Blackwell drops all criminal charges and signs a non-disclosure agreement regarding the marriage." Grace looked at Vivian, who shook her head slightly. "Counteroffer," Vivian said. "Full custody with supervised visitation only, pending psychological evaluation of Mr. Blackwell. $20,000 monthly child support. Mrs. Blackwell retains all marital assets acquired during the marriage, including her interest in the mansion. No NDA, and Mr. Blackwell pleads guilty to the fraud charges." "Absolutely not," Chen said. "My client won't plead guilty to anything." "Then we'll see him in court." Vivian closed her folder. Grace doesn't need a settlement. She has financial support from Theodore. She has a home. She has full evidence of Marcus's crimes. Your client, on the other hand, has a failing company, no income, frozen assets, and a criminal trial approaching. Who needs this settlement more? Chen's expression tightened. I'll speak with my client." After he disconnected, Theodore turned to Grace. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay." Grace touched her massive belly. The baby was due in 2 weeks. Dr. Shaw said any day now. "Tired of being pregnant, tired of this legal battle, but okay." "It's almost over," Theodore said. "Marcus knows he's lost. He's just trying to save face now." But it wasn't over, not quite. 3 days later, Grace went into labor. Real labor, not false contractions. Her water broke at 2 in the morning. Judith rushed her to the hospital. Owen followed in his car, Theodore arriving shortly after. 13 hours of labor. Grace had never experienced pain like this. Her mother held one hand, a nurse held the other. Dr. Shaw coached her through each contraction. "You're doing great," Dr. Shaw said. "Almost there. One more push." Grace pushed. The pain was transcendent, all-consuming. She screamed, and then suddenly, blessedly, it was over. "It's a girl," Dr. Shaw announced, though they'd known that for months. "She's here." They placed the baby on Grace's chest, tiny, red, screaming. Perfect, absolutely perfect. Grace looked down at her daughter and felt something shift fundamentally in her chest. This was her baby, her responsibility, her reason for everything. "Hi," Grace whispered through tears. "Hi, baby girl. I'm your mom." "I've got you. I've got you forever." The baby's cries quieted. She looked up at Grace with unfocused eyes, finding her mother's face. "We're going to call you Nora," Grace said. "Nora Judith Patterson Blackwell, named after your grandma, who's the strongest woman I know. You're going to be strong too. We both are." Theodore appeared in the doorway. When he saw the baby, his face crumpled. He covered his mouth with his hand, tears streaming down his face. "May I?" he asked quietly. Grace nodded. Theodore approached slowly, carefully. He looked down at Nora with wonder. "My granddaughter," he whispered. "Hello, little one. I'm so sorry for everything. But I promise you, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you're safe. You and your mother both." Nora made a small sound. Theodore laughed through his tears. "She's perfect," he said. "Grace, she's absolutely perfect." Later, when Nora was sleeping in the bassinet beside Grace's hospital bed, Judith pulled Grace close. "Grace, you did it, baby," Judith said. "You made it through everything, and now you have her. You're a mother now." "I'm terrified," Grace admitted. "What if I mess up? What if I'm not good enough?" "You'll mess up sometimes. All mothers do." Judith kissed Grace's forehead. "But you'll also be amazing, because you love her, and you're stronger than you ever knew." Grace wanted to believe that. Looking at Nora's tiny face, she thought maybe she could. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Her heart sank. Another threat from Marcus? But when she opened it, the message was different. "Congratulations on your baby girl. I heard the news. I want you to know I'm dropping the appeals, accepting the settlement terms. You win, Grace. You and Nora deserve peace." Grace stared at the message. From Marcus, finally admitting defeat. She should have felt triumphant, vindicated. Instead, she just felt tired. She deleted the message without responding. Marcus didn't deserve her energy anymore, not even to acknowledge his surrender. "Everything okay?" Judith asked. "Everything's perfect," Grace said, meaning but "we're safe. That's all that matters." She looked at her daughter, this tiny human who'd given her a reason to fight, a reason to stop shrinking herself, a reason to demand better. Nora would grow up knowing her mother was strong, that women didn't have to accept abuse or control or manipulation, that leaving was always an option if staying meant losing yourself. Grace would make sure of it. The first 6 weeks with Nora were a blur of sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and the particular exhaustion that came from being solely responsible for another human's survival. Grace had never been so tired or so happy. Nora was a good baby, all things considered. She woke every 3 hours to eat but settled back to sleep relatively easily. She rarely cried without reason. When she did cry, Grace was learning to distinguish between hungry cries, tired cries, and uncomfortable cries. Judith stayed for the first month helping with everything, but she had to return to work eventually. Her hospital couldn't hold her position indefinitely. "Are you sure you'll be okay alone, Fem?" Judith asked the morning she left, anxiety written across her face. I'll be fine, Mom. Grace bounced Nora gently. Theodore hired a night nurse for the first few months. Owen checks in daily. Vivian drops by twice a week. I have help. That's not what I mean. Judith touched Grace's cheek. Are you okay? Really okay? Emotionally? Grace considered the question honestly. I'm adjusting. Some days are harder than others. But Mom, I'm free. For the first time in 4 years, I can make my own choices. That feels incredible. After Judith left, the house felt quieter. Grace and Nora established new routines. Morning feedings by the window, watching the sunrise. Afternoon walks when the weather was nice, Nora bundled in the stroller. Evening baths that made Nora giggle. Nighttime feedings in the rocking chair, Grace reading aloud from whatever book she was working through. The divorce finalized. Just 6 weeks after Nora's birth, Marcus accepted the settlement. Full custody to Grace, supervised visitation pending evaluation, 20,000 monthly child support, no criminal charges in exchange for pleading guilty to the fraud. His company was liquidated, his assets seized to pay restitution, his reputation destroyed. Theodore told Grace the details over coffee one morning while Nora slept in her bassinet. Marcus is living with a college friend, Theodore said, working as a consultant, making decent money, but nothing like before. He's angry, but he's surviving. Does he want to see Nora? Grace asked. He hasn't requested visitation yet. Theodore's expression was carefully neutral. I think he's struggling with what fatherhood means when he can't control the narrative. Grace looked at her daughter. Nora slept peacefully, tiny fists curled beside her face. Maybe that's for the best. She deserves a father who wants her for the right reasons. She has people who love her, Theodore said. Helen and I have been discussing visiting schedules if you're comfortable with that. We don't want to overwhelm you, but we'd like to be part of Nora's life. I'd like that. Grace meant it. Theodore had proven himself. So had Helen. They'd chosen Grace and Nora over their own son. That meant something. The media attention gradually faded. There were newer scandals, fresher stories. Grace became old news. She was grateful for the anonymity. She started teaching again when Nora was 3 months old. Part-time, just 2 classes a week at the community college. Theodore had offered to continue supporting her financially, but Grace needed this, needed to work, needed to build something that was hers. Her students were mostly adults returning to education, single mothers, people changing careers. They didn't know about her divorce drama. She was just Professor Blackwell, teaching English composition and helping them write better essays. It felt normal, gloriously, beautifully normal. One evening, while Nora was with the night nurse, Grace did something she'd been avoiding. She opened her laptop and searched for Marcus's name. He'd been quiet on social media. No more posts about being victimized, no more interviews. He'd essentially disappeared from public view. Grace found one recent article, an interview with a business magazine about his lessons learned from failure. She almost didn't read it, but curiosity won. Marcus talked about hubris, about making mistakes, about the importance of accountability. He never mentioned Grace by name, never acknowledged what he'd actually done, but he danced around it with careful language about losing sight of what mattered and damaging important relationships. It was a sanitized version. Marcus reimagining himself as someone who'd learned and grown rather than someone who'd been stopped. Grace closed the laptop. She didn't need Marcus to fully confess, didn't need him to grovel. She just needed him to stay away from her daughter. So far he had. 6 months after Nora's birth, Grace started a support group. It met weekly in the community center. Women who'd left abusive relationships, women still trying to leave, women figuring out life after divorce. Grace facilitated, drawing on her own experience. She didn't claim to have all the answers. She just provided space for women to talk honestly about what they'd survived. I stayed for 7 years, one woman said during their 5th meeting. Her name was Michelle, early 30s, 2 kids. I kept thinking if I could just be perfect enough, he'd stop being angry. But he was never going to stop. That was his choice, not mine. How did you finally leave? Another woman asked. I saw my daughter apologizing to him for existing. She was 4 years old, saying sorry because she'd spilled juice, and I realized she was learning from me. learning that women apologize for everything, that we make ourselves small to keep men comfortable. Michelle's voice broke. I didn't want that for her, so I left. Grace recognized that moment, the realization that your choices affected more than just you, that children watched everything and learned what relationships were supposed to look like. You broke the pattern, Grace said quietly. That took incredible courage. I didn't feel courageous. I felt terrified. Courage isn't not being afraid, it's doing the thing anyway. Grace looked around the circle. Every woman here did something terrifying. You left. You fought back. You're rebuilding. That's courage. After the meeting, several women approached Grace, thanked her for starting the group, told her their stories. Grace listened to each one, her heart breaking and healing simultaneously. This was purpose. This was meaning. Not being Marcus's wife, not living in a mansion, not performing perfection for people who didn't really see her. This, helping women find their strength, creating community, building something real. Theodore funded the group, rented the space, provided childcare during meetings, donated money for women who needed help with legal fees or moving expenses. You're doing important work, he told Grace. I'm proud to support it. Ethan got involved too. He started an art therapy component, teaching women to express their experiences through painting and sculpture. His own trauma from Marcus's manipulations gave him insight, empathy. The program grew. Within a year, they were serving 50 women regularly. Grace hired a part-time coordinator, applied for grants, started building something sustainable. Helen volunteered to watch Nora during meetings. The two of them developed a close bond. Helen was a different grandmother than she'd been a mother. Softer, more present. She talked to Nora constantly, sang old songs, read stories with different voices for each character. I'm trying to do better, Helen told Grace one evening while Grace nursed Nora after a meeting. I failed my own children. Let them be raised by nannies while I played society matron. But I won't fail Nora. She'll know she's loved. She already knows, Grace said. Look at how she smiles when you walk in. Helen's eyes filled with tears. Thank you for giving me this second chance. Grace celebrated Nora's first birthday with a small party in the backyard. Just family and a few close friends. Judith drove up from her apartment. Theodore and Helen brought presents. Ethan painted a portrait of Nora that made everyone cry. Owen came with his new girlfriend, a kind woman who worked as a paramedic. They ate cake, sang off-key, watched Nora destroy her smash cake with pure joy. It was perfect, simple, and real and full of love. Marcus sent a card, no return address, just happy birthday to Nora in his distinctive handwriting. No message for Grace, no request to visit. Grace threw it away. He'd missed his chance. That night, after everyone left and Nora was asleep, Grace sat on the porch swing. The neighborhood was quiet. Streetlights glowed. Somewhere a dog barked. Normal sounds, normal life. Grace thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago, lying in a hospital bed, terrified, broken. That woman had thought she was nothing without Marcus. This woman knew better. Grace had built a life, a real one. Not perfect, not glamorous, but honest. Full of people who genuinely cared about her. Full of work that mattered. Full of a daughter who'd never learned to shrink herself. Her phone buzzed. A text from one of the women in her support group. Left him today, scared but free. Thank you for showing me I could. Grace smiled and typed back. Proud of you. You've got this. Call if you need anything. Another woman saved. Another life changed. This was Grace's legacy now. Not being Mrs. Blackwell, not living in a mansion, not performing perfection. Being real, being strong, being someone who fought back and showed other women they could fight too. 18 months after Nora's birth, Grace received an unexpected visitor. She was home between classes, Nora playing with the blocks on the living room floor, when Owen knocked and said, "Someone's here to see you. He says it's important." Grace tensed. Who? Marcus. Grace's first instinct was to say no, send him away, keep the fragile peace they'd established. But curiosity won. Give me 5 minutes, then send him to the porch. I'll talk to him outside. She picked up Nora, carried her to the nursery, and left her with the nanny. Then Grace took a deep breath, checked her reflection, and walked to the front porch. Marcus waited at the bottom of the steps. He looked different, older, thinner. His clothes were nice but not designer. His hair needed cutting. The polish was gone. Grace, his voice was careful. Thank you for seeing me. You have 5 minutes. Grace crossed her arms. What do you want? I wanted to see her. Nora, my daughter. He looked at the house like he could see through the walls. I know I gave up my rights. I know I don't deserve visitation. But I thought maybe. No. The word hung in the air. Marcus's expression crumpled. Please, I'm her father. Biologically, Grace's voice was steady. But Marcus, you've never met her, never held her, never asked about her except through lawyers. You sent a birthday card with no return address. That's not fatherhood. I was ashamed. Marcus's hands shook. I was dealing with the consequences of what I'd done. I didn't think I deserved to be her father. You don't. Grace said it without anger, just fact. You destroyed your own family for money and control. You sent another woman to attack me while I was pregnant. You forged documents to frame me for fraud. You tried to take everything from me, including our daughter. Why would I let you anywhere near her now? Because people change. I've been in therapy, working on myself. I understand now what I did wrong. Good. I'm glad you're getting help. But Marcus, that doesn't erase what you did. It doesn't make you safe. Grace took a step back. Nora is happy. She's healthy. She's loved by people who would never hurt her. I won't risk her emotional safety, so you can feel better about yourself. I'm her father, Marcus said again, desperate now. Theodore is her grandfather. He's earned that role by showing up, by being present, by choosing us over you. Ethan is her uncle. Helen is her grandmother. Owen is like family. Even Vivian comes to birthday parties. Grace's voice softened slightly. You could have been her father, but you chose money and power instead. Now you have to live with that choice. Marcus stood silent. Then he said, I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know I'm sorry. Grace studied his face. He looked sincere. Maybe he even was sincere, but sincerity didn't undo years of manipulation and abuse. I believe you're sorry, Grace said, but sorry isn't enough. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I lost making myself smaller. Sorry doesn't erase the trauma of that hospital attack. Sorry doesn't protect my daughter from a father who sees people as tools. I'm different now. Maybe, but I don't owe you the chance to prove it. Nora doesn't owe you that chance. We're building a good life, a safe one, and I won't risk that for your redemption arc. Marcus's shoulders sagged. So that's it? I never get to know my daughter? That's up to you. If you really want a relationship with her, start by respecting my boundaries. Work on yourself. Build a stable life. Prove over time that you're safe. Maybe when she's older and can make her own choices, she'll decide to know you. But until then, my job is to protect her, and that means protecting her from you. Grace turned to go back inside, though. Grace, Marcus called. She paused but didn't turn around. You were right to leave. You deserve better than I gave you. I hope you found it. I have, Grace said without looking back. And Marcus, that house you gave me, the one Theodore bought, that's not what made me happy. Walking away from you is what made me happy, remember that. She went inside and closed the door. Through the window, she watched Marcus stand there for a long moment. Then he walked back to his car and drove away. Grace waited until he was gone. Then she went to the nursery and picked up Nora. Hi, baby girl, she whispered. Did you have fun playing? Nora babbled something that might have been mama or might have been random sounds. At 18 months, she was starting to form words. She was also starting to walk, though she still preferred crawling for speed. Grace carried her back to the living room. They sat together on the floor, building towers with blocks just so Nora could knock them down and laugh. This was happiness, this simplicity, this presence. Not the mansion, not the designer clothes, not the charity galas and business dinners. This, a toddler laughing, afternoon sunlight through windows, the freedom to spend her day however she chose. Later that evening, after Nora was asleep, Grace sat at her laptop and wrote. She'd been working on a memoir, her therapist's idea. a way to process everything that had happened. Grace had been resistant at first. Who wanted to read about her divorce? But her support group women encouraged her, told her the story needed telling, that other women needed to hear it. So Grace wrote about meeting Marcus, about the slow isolation, about the hospital attack, about finding strength she didn't know she had, about rebuilding. She wrote for hours, the words flowing easier now than they had months ago. The story was painful but important. Grace was learning to own it, to see it not as something shameful, but as something she'd survived. Around 11, her phone buzzed. Theodore, saw Marcus at the office today. He said he'd visited you. Are you okay? Grace, I'm fine. Told him no visitation. He wasn't happy, but he accepted that. Theodore, good. You don't owe him anything. Grace, I know. How are you? Theodore, old and tired, but happy to be Nora's grandfather. Helen and I were talking about taking her to the zoo next weekend, if you're comfortable with that. Grace, she'd love that. She's obsessed with animals right now. Fair warning, she'll want to see the elephants 500 times, Theodore. Perfect. We'll see every elephant they have. Grace smiled. Theodore had transformed over the last 18 months. He'd stepping back from his company, spending more time with family. He took Nora to the park weekly, taught her to identify birds, played endless games of peekaboo. He was the grandfather Grace wished she'd had, the father-in-law she'd hoped for when she married Marcus. Better late than never. Grace closed her laptop and went to check on Nora one more time. The baby slept peacefully, her stuffed elephant clutched in her arms. Grace adjusted the blanket and stood watching her daughter breathe. You're going to grow up strong, Grace whispered. You're going to know you're worth more than what any man thinks of you. You're going to see your mother as someone who fought back, who built something real, who didn't let anyone define her. Nora slept on, unaware of the promises her mother was making. Grace walked back to her own room, looked around at the simple space. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just clean and comfortable in hers. She thought about the mansion briefly. All those rooms she'd been afraid to use, the formal furniture she couldn't sit on, the life she'd performed rather than lived. She didn't miss it, not even a little. Grace changed into pajamas and climbed into bed. Tomorrow she'd teach her morning class. Tomorrow afternoon she'd run her support group. Tomorrow evening she'd give Nora a bath and read her 3 bedtime stories. Tomorrow would be normal, busy, full. Tomorrow would be hers. As Grace fell asleep, she thought about the women who had texted her over the last 18 months. The hundreds of messages from strangers who had found courage in her story. She thought about Michelle and the other women in her group, rebuilding their lives one day at a time. She thought about her mother who'd shown Grace what strength looked like long before Grace knew she'd need it. She thought about Theodore and Helen trying to break patterns they'd spent decades building. She thought about Ethan, using his own pain to help others heal. And she thought about Nora, who'd never know what it felt like to shrink herself for a man's comfort. Grace had thought losing Marcus meant losing everything. Instead, she lost dead weight and found herself. The man who tried to destroy her had built her instead, had revealed strength she never knew she had forced her to choose between survival and comfort. She'd chosen survival, and in surviving, she'd found something better than comfort. She'd found authenticity, community, purpose, freedom. She'd found herself. Grace Patterson Blackwell was not Marcus's victim. She was not Theodore's charity case. She was not her daughter's whole world. She was Grace, teacher, mother, survivor, advocate, friend. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Grace's journey from that terrifying hospital room to the life she built proves something powerful. You're stronger than you think, and you deserve better than settling for someone who makes you small. If Grace's story moved you, show some love by hitting that like button right now. Drop a comment below and tell me, what moment in this story hit you hardest? Was it the attack, the father-in-law's protection, Grace's final confrontation with Marcus? I read every single comment, and your insights matter. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications because I share stories like this every week. Real stories about real people who faced impossible situations and found their way through. Stories that remind us we're not alone. And here's the most important part. Share this video. Send it to that friend who needs to hear Grace's message. Post it to your social media. Because somewhere out there, someone is lying in their own version of that hospital bed, thinking they have no way out. Your share might be the thing that gives them hope, that shows them they can fight back too. Grace didn't just survive, she thrived. And her story continues inspiring thousands of women every single day. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, you are never too broken to rebuild. You are never too trapped to escape. You are never alone. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay strong.